subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Your offensive intention is too obvious. If it were me, I would definitely not shoot sideways in front of Shibuya. Nijimura Shizo listened to the two men's instructions, lowered his head, and thought carefully about his just attack. Chapter 1:20 The plan failed. While thinking about it, Hongsun Zeuzu found that his attack just now was indeed too obvious. Knowing that facing a tall center like Jason Theiber, he did not choose to shift his focus first. Instead, he chose to shoot directly sideways. No matter how he thought about it, he felt very stupid just now. I understand. Thank you. Hongsun Shiozao humbly accepted the guidance of the two, then walked into the three-point line and prepared to defend. Transition of possession. Jason Theiber held the ball with both hands and made a triple threat move. Nijimura Shiozao concentrated on guarding Jason Thibault seriously. Jason Thibault didn't hesitate at all. He exerted force with his left foot and kicked the ball with his right hand. In an instant, he broke through from Hong Siyuan Shiozao's side. By the time Nijimura Shizo reacted, Jason Thibault was already leaping high and ready for a dunk. So fast, Nijimura Shizo turned his head in surprise and witnessed Jason Thibault pouring the basketball into the basket. Collapse. Boom. Jason Thibault landed hard, grabbed the basketball on the ground, and passed it to Hongsun Zhu. Go on, don't be in a daze. Nijimura Zeuzo caught the basketball, took a deep breath, and adjusted his emotions in time. This time, Nijimura Shizo did not choose to shoot directly, but kept dribbling in an attempt to mobilize Jason Thibault's focus. However, Hongsun Shiojiao was surprised to find that Jason Shibuya did not lose his position at all. Jason Shibuya looked at Hongsun Shiozao, who was suddenly stunned, and reminded, Nijimura, if I thought about it, your ball would have been cut off right now. Zach clapped his hands and shouted, Don't be in a daze during the game, Nijimura. Nijimura Shizo immediately reacted and attacked again. This time Hongsun built, broke through, made an emergency stop, pulled back, and tried every move. But there was no way to break through Jason Thibber's defense, and he couldn't even shift Jason Thibber's focus. Sure enough, Shibuya's defense is too good. Hongsun Shiozao smiled bitterly in his heart, seeing that there was not much time left for the attack. Hongsun Shiozao had no choice but to break through immediately, and then made a sudden bow. Jason Theiber's focus was shifted by this. Nijimura Zaizu seized this opportunity and suddenly lowered his body and rushed inside. Satsuki Momoi said, Breakthrough. Fang Jilai shook his head. No, with the strength of Hongsun Shiojan, it is impossible to break through Jason. Sure enough, after being shaken, Jason Shibuya immediately chased back and instantly stopped Nijimura Shizo, who was about to lay up. Damn it, you adjusted back so quickly. Nijimura gritted his teeth and tried to force the shot. Seeing this, Jason Shibuya jumped up suddenly and swatted the basketball built by Hongsun away. Collapse. Bang. As the basketball was shot away, Hongsun also fell heavily to the ground. Jason Shibuya stretched out his hand to pull up Hongsun Shiozao, who fell to the ground, and said, Go on. Nijimura Shizo gritted his teeth and nodded to continue the game. During the game, the score has reached 17-0. Nijimura Shizo has not been able to score a point from Jason Thibault so far. Alan looked at Hongsun Shiojin, who was being brutalized by Jason Thibault on the court, and couldn't help but feel a little pitiful. Hongsun is so miserable, being treated so violently by Jason Shibuya. Nico stood aside and slowly said, There's nothing we can do about it, because Lego asked Shibuya to defend seriously to the extent that Hongsun couldn't score a goal. At least it's not bad. After all, Shibuya hasn't turned on his wild nature yet. Zach replied, It's all for Hongsun to enter the zone again. Nash Goldo stood beside Fang Jilai, constantly observing the changes in Nijimura's body with the eyes of the devil. Fang Jilai spoke slowly. Has there been a change? Nash Goldo shook his head. No, the body function is constantly getting lower and there is no sign of getting higher. Hearing this, Fang Jilai frowned. It stands to reason that Hong Tsunshio was so brutally treated by Jason Thibault. The belief in scoring in my heart must have long surpassed the belief when playing against the Jackets. However, judging from the current situation, Hongtsuin construction shows no signs of opening the zone again. In this case, there is only one possibility. Hongtsuin Shiozao has other ideas in mind, that is, to enter the zone. Just as Fang Jilai expected, Nijimura Shizo already wanted to enter the zone when he was beaten 7-0 by Jason Thibault. Nijimura Shizo did have the belief that he wanted to score a goal, but at the same time, he also had the idea of entering the zone. This is the reason why there is no sign of entering the zone until Hongtsuin builds. The more you want to enter the zone, the harder it is to enter. What's more, it's someone like Hongtsuin Shiozao who pushes the door open with faith. It's over. The score is 21-0. Zach spoke after Jason Thibault shot his final basketball. Nijimura Zizu fell to his knees, lowered his head, and kept breathing heavily. He thumped the ground feebly. The feeling of defeat made him very uncomfortable. After all, I still didn't get a single point, not even the zone. Get up. Jason Thebes' voice came out. Nijimura Zizu raised his head, looked at Jason Shibua's outstretched hand, and fell silent. Jason Shibua stretched out his hand and said, "It's not shameful to lose to me. After all, I am very strong." When Nijimura Shizo saw Jason Shibua's words, a smile appeared on his face, and he accepted the reality. I can't beat Jason Thibault in the first place, so why should I worry about losing? Nijimura Zizu stretched out his hand and shook it with Jason Shibua, stood up. "Hey, I'm really impressed by you. You really don't show any mercy at all." Zach walked up to Hong Cun Zizu and said angrily, "You think everyone is like me? How many goals will you let go?" Nijimura Shizo touched his head and smiled sheepishly. Fang Jilai sighed slightly. It seemed that Hong Cun Zizu's plan to enter the zone in a duel was ruined. Now, even Fang Jilai doesn't know how to get Hongtsuin Shiozhua into the zone. But there is no way. This thing can only let nature take its course. The more anxious you are, the harder it will be to enter. Jason, Senior Nijimura, please take a rest. The others will continue training. Zach and others immediately replied, "Yes." After Alan finished shouting, he punched Hongtsuin Zizu's chest and said, "Come on, boy." After saying that, Alan turned around and continued to train with Victor. Nijimura Shizo touched the area where his chest was beaten. A smile appeared on his face, and he made a determination in his heart. I must enter the zone. Chapter 121, 10,000 Vipers. After 4 days of training for the Black Emperor Dragons, the second game arrived. The opponent in this competition is the most powerful street ball team in the nearby street ball circle, Team Vipers. In the arena, Satsuki Momoi told everyone about the information he had collected. The Vipers are captained by a white man named Dicky Anthony, who plays power forward. It is said that he has a skill called Snake Fang. Hongtsuin Shiozao was a little confused and asked, "Snake's Fang? What kind of skill is that?" Zach glanced at Hongtsuin speechlessly and scolded, "Hongtsuin, don't interrupt when sister-in-law is talking." Only then did Nijimura Shizo react. He touched his head and apologized sheepishly. Sorry. Satsuki Momoi didn't care. It's okay. If you have any questions, just ask. It's normal." Fang Jilai smiled slightly and said, Yeah, keep talking." Satsuki Momoi nodded and continued. Their center is a white man named Kit Berry. It is said that he has a strong sense of rebounding and is the patron saint of the basket. The third one is a black man named Hausberg, who is a small forward. He has accurate inside shooting and is good at inside shooting after breakthrough. The fourth is a white man named Judith Gall. He is good at three-pointers. It is said that his shooting posture is very weird and is called cannon shooting. The last one is their point guard Titus Monroe, who is a white man. So far, only his passing has been found to be very accurate, and nothing else has been discovered. But I heard from others that his eyes are a little different. Nash Goldo became a little interested after hearing this. Oh, the eyes are a little different. Satsuki Momoi nodded. Yes, it is said that he seems to have a pair of eyes that can observe the whole scene. It seems to be called eagle eyes. Fang Jilai was startled and felt a little surprised. Eagle eyes? Aren't these the eyes of Green's high school teammate in the original book? That's right, eagle eyes are Teikō Kazunari's eyes in the original work, possessing the ability to observe the entire scene. He is called Kuroko Tetsuyu's nemesis. Unexpectedly, Fang Jilai was the first to see these eyes in the beautiful country. But it was just a little surprising, after all, that Eagle Eye was obviously not enough in front of Nash Goldo's Demon King Eye. Nash Goldo didn't know what effect Eagle Eye had. Now he just wants to compete with Titus from the 10,000 Vipers to see whose eyes are better. If Fang Jilai knew what Nash Goldo was thinking, he would definitely complain. Is there any point in comparing? He will kneel down as soon as you open your eyes. After Satsuki Momoi finished telling the information about everyone in the 10,000 Vipers team, he continued. The scoring points of the 10,000 Vipers focus on Judith and Dicky, both of whom have good 3-point accuracy and inside accuracy. The two of them shoot from the outside, and Jeter guards the inside. This is why the Vipers can become the number one in the nearby street ball circle. Their outside firepower is too strong, and Jeter's rebounding ability inside is top-notch. Jason Shibwa laughed after hearing this, opened his right hand and raised it, and then slowly tightened it hard. Rebound? There's no way he can get a rebound on top of me. Alan's expression was relaxed, with no trace of nervousness at all. Yeah, I don't believe that Jeter can grab a rebound in front of Tebow. Satsuki Momoi smiled lightly after hearing this. Everyone, come on. When the day of the competition comes, the venue is still the same as last time. The audience also came to the scene to watch the second game of the Black Emperor Dragons. It's too scary. In just the second game, the Black Emperor Dragons played against the 10,000 Vipers. Yes, the 10,000 Vipers are recognized as number one here. I wonder if the Black Emperor Dragons can win. It should be easy. After all, wasn't the Jackets casually crushed by the Black Emperor Dragons last time? Not necessarily. After all, the 10,000 Vipers are not weak. Maybe this game will be a difficult battle. I can't wait to watch the game. The audience exchanged their thoughts with the people around them, and everyone couldn't wait to watch this game. The Fang family security guards stood on both sides early, protecting Fang Jilai's safety at all times. Snipers are also guarding the stadium at various high points. If there is a suspicious person, they will immediately shoot and kill them. Coming. The 10,000 Vipers are coming. Follow the shouts of the audience. A menacing procession walked towards the team, headed by their captain Dickie Anthony. Dickie Anthony wore a black sports sweatshirt and put a hat on his head. There's a lip nail on the right side of his lower lip, like a poisonous snake's fang. At a glance, everyone behind Dickie Anthony has the same look. The only difference is the position of the lip nail. Some people have it on the upper lip, and some people have it on the lower lip, just like different varieties of venomous snakes. Captain, it was a fierce battle today. It is said that the Jackets were swept by the Black Emperor Dragons with a score of 121-12. Titus Monroe said in a deep voice with worry on his face. Dickie Anthony's face was also very serious, because the opponent's strength made him feel scared. Just do your best. After all, that is the team of the heir to the Fang family. Kit Berry yawned and offered a different opinion. That's not necessarily true. After all, Blau of the Jackets is just a reckless guy. But I am different. I will get 30 rebounds over the Black Emperor Dragons. Just shoot with confidence and boldly. Judith Gal tilted her head. Her tone was a bit educational. Kit, your character of underestimating the enemy really needs to change. Kit Berry didn't take it seriously and laughed sarcastically. Old teams can't get rebounds in front of me, let alone a newly created team. The Fang family is indeed great, but that doesn't mean their team is great. Dickie Anthony frowned and scolded. Okay, who gave you the courage to talk about the Fang family in front of so many people? Only then did Kit Berry realize something was wrong and quickly close his mouth. Looking around carefully, he breathed a sigh of relief when he found that no one heard what he just said. Titus Monroe sighed. Kit, think about it before you speak next time. Kit Berry suddenly became unhappy. None of your business. Titus spread his hands and spoke in a very calm tone. It's just a friendly reminder. Suddenly, an exclamation suddenly came out. Coming. Black Emperor Dragon Team. Chapter 122. Hong Tsun Xiao's father. Everyone's attention shifted to the direction of the Black Emperor Dragon team. I saw all the members of the Black Emperor Dragon team following Fang Jilai. Everyone is wearing a black custom-made suit, exuding an extremely powerful sense of oppression. Dickie Anthony looked in the direction of the Black Emperor Dragon team, and after feeling the pressure from the crowd, his expression became serious. Titus Monroe looked at the tall Jason Thibault of the Black Emperor Dragons, turned to Kit Berry and said, "Kit, the center of the Black Emperor Dragons is not an easy guy to look at." Kit Berry noticed Jason Thibault and felt the terrifying aura emanating from Jason Thibault. He who was still boasting suddenly became silent. Fang Jilai walked up to the 10,000 Vipers, stretched out his hand with a smile, and said, "Everyone, please give me your advice." Dickie Anthony wiped his hands nervously, and after making sure there was no offense, he stretched out his hand to shake hands with Fang Jilai. "I hope you will show mercy, Mr. Fang." Fang Jilai raised the corner of his mouth, patted Dickie Anthony on the shoulder, and led everyone to the lounge to change clothes. Dickie Anthony had some joy on his face. Judith Gall on the side patted Dickie Anthony on the back. "Don't be in a daze. Get ready to change clothes." Dickie Anthony came to his senses. "Oh my God, I actually shook hands with the heir to the Fang family. It's incredible. Here is the Black Emperor Dragon team." Everyone started to change clothes. On the way to change clothes, Zach asked Jason Sieber, "Shibwa, how does this person make you feel?" Jason Thibault took off his suit and shirt, revealing his strong muscles, and replied, "If you don't pay much attention, it's impossible to defeat us anyway." Seeing this, Zach turned around and asked Nash Goldo, who was changing clothes. "Nash, how do you feel?" Nash Goldo said calmly while changing his clothes, "I don't feel anything. If I have to say it, it's quite weak." After hearing this, Zach felt that he seemed to have asked the wrong person. The strength of the two of them could be said to be a fault that crushed him and others. The dangerous aura they feel may not be felt by them at all. Alan hooked Zach's shoulder and teased, "Zach, why are you asking the two of them? You don't know their strength yet." Zach pushed Alan away, patted the shoulder that Alan had seduced, and said in disgust, "Don't pull me like this. It will only make me think you are gay." Alan spread his hands speechlessly. "I didn't expect to be disliked by you, hey?" After saying that, Alan fell into Hong Tsu's arms with a bitter look on his face, pretending to be aggrieved, and said, "Hong Tsun, look at him. He actually dislikes me." Nijimura Zuzu felt a chill and quickly pushed Alan away. Alan suddenly laughed after being pushed away. Seeing Alan's appearance, Zach complained, "Is he crazy?" Hong Tsun Xiaozhao nodded speechlessly. "I think so." The two teams changed their clothes and warmed up on the court. Everyone tried their best to get their bodies moving first so that they could cope with the upcoming competition. After the warm-up time is over, the game officially begins. For this competition, the Fang family specially invited a professional commentator. After the commentator came on stage, he began to introduce the members of both sides. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's exciting basketball game. The two sides in the game are called the number one team by basketball enthusiasts around, the 10,000 Vipers." The audience began to applaud and cheer, and the basketball atmosphere was comparable to the atmosphere of the Sakura Country Finals. Nijimura Shintarō looked at the audience around him with some emotion and felt the cheers of the audience. It's hard to imagine that this is just a street ball game. After Nijimura finished sighing, he looked at the members of the Viper team that the commentator mentioned. After feeling the different intensities of the auras emitted by the five people, Niji Kungsuzu's eyes became serious. So strong, he deserves to be the number one in the street ball circles around him. Nijimura Shintarō felt that he had gained experience every day since he joined Fang Jilai's team. He originally thought that his ability could compete in the beautiful country. But after seeing these masters, Hong Tsun's thoughts became calmer. He felt like he was like a frog at the bottom of a well, sitting in a well watching the world. However, even if he knows that his opponent is very strong, today's Hong Tsun Zaizu will not back down. Because today, a very important person in his life came to the scene to watch his game. Hong Tsun Xiaozhao looked slightly towards the stage that had been built. A middle-aged man with a somewhat pale complexion and an infusion in his hand was sitting on the stage and quietly looking at Hongsuen's father. Nijimura Shizo looked a little distressed when he saw his father, because a few days ago, the hospital told Hongsuan Shiozao that his father's illness had begun to improve. He could already get out of bed and walk. After hearing the news, Hongsuan Shiozao immediately shared it with his father, who was also happy after hearing it. After learning that Nijimura Shizo was going to play a game today, his father expressed his request to come and watch the game. At first, Hongsuan Shiozao refused even if he was beaten to death, because his father's illness had just improved, and if he was accidentally injured in a crowded place, the game would outweigh the loss. But Hongsuan Shiozao's father shook his head and said to Hongsuan Shiozao, "Hongsuan, I haven't seen your game since I got sick. I want to see it." Nijimura Shizo was silent after hearing this. After a long silence, he agreed to his father's request. Then Hongsuan Shiozao found Fang Jilai, knelt in front of Fang Jilai, and asked Fang Jilai to help his father find an exclusive place with few people. At that time, Fang Jilai was shocked by the construction of Hongsuan. Because Hongsuan Shiozao knelt down as soon as he came up, Fang Jilai couldn't fix it. After learning that it was just a small request, Fang Jilai immediately agreed to Hongsuan's request. And I hope that after the construction of Hongsuan, people will not kneel down frequently. Back to the present. After Hongsuan Shiozao finished reminiscing, his eyes became firm. I must score a goal in front of my father. After the commentator introduced the 10,000 Vipers, he began to introduce the Black Emperor Dragons. The next team is from the team sponsored by our Fang family. It is a team led by Fang Jilai, the heir to the Fang family, and they're the Black Emperor Dragon team. The audience turned to look at the Black Emperor Dragon team. Their cheers and applause were much louder than those of the 10,000 Vipers. Black Emperor Dragon, Black Emperor Dragon, Black Emperor Dragon, Master Fang, Master Fang, Master Fang. Some of the audience shouted the team name of the Black Emperor Dragons. Some people shouted for Mr. Fang, and everyone cheered and looked like enthusiastic fans. Fang Jilai and others smiled slightly and responded to the audience's applause. Chapter 123 Venomous Snake Fang. After the introduction, both teams began to arrange their players. As the captain, Fang Jilai arranged for the members to play. Point guard Nash Gordo, shooting guard Nico, small forward Fang Jilai, power forward Zach, center Jason Thiber. Fang Jilai knew that Hongsuan Shiozao's father had come to watch the game, but he still did not let Nijimura Shizo start the game. This is because Fang Jilai wanted Nijimura to observe his opponent's playing style off the court. Only after playing in this way can we have a way to deal with it. The purpose is to let Hongsu Zizu express himself in front of his father and make his father less worried about him. The referee took the basketball and walked between Jason Thiber and Kit Berry and threw it high. Jason Thiber and Kit Berry jumped up at the same time, and the basketball was undoubtedly pointed to his backcourt by Jason Thiber. After landing, Kit Berry couldn't help but marvel. Jumped so high. The commentator starts his own career as a commentator. A good start to the game. The Black Emperor Dragons took the lead in getting the ball. The ball is given to Nash. Let's see how our Nash attacks. On the field, Nash Goldo didn't hesitate at all after receiving the basketball and immediately started to prepare for a fast break. Titus Monroe did not dare to be careless and activated Eagle Eye at the beginning of the game. After Jason Thiber won the jump ball, Titus Monroe, who turned on Eagle, instantly noticed Nash Goldo's actions, so he shouted, "Defense!" The members of the 10,000 Vipers didn't dare to be careless, because Titus Monroe was their eyes on the court. Nashker saw that everyone was already in a defensive position, so he stopped thinking about a fast break. The corners of Nash Goldo's mouth raised slightly, and he suddenly became interested in Titus Monroe. "Is this Eagle Eye? It's interesting. Let me see how far you can go." With a wicked smile, Nash Goldo dribbled the ball in front of Titus Monroe. Titus Monroe looked serious and was highly concentrated, guarding Nash Goldo. Suddenly, Nash Goldo started dribbling the ball at high speed, so fast that ordinary people could not see clearly. After dribbling for 2.5 seconds, Nash Goldo suddenly opened his hands, and the basketball magically disappeared. But Titus Monroe seemed to know where the basketball had gone, shouting, "House!" When Hausberger heard this, he immediately focused his attention. Boom! The basketball appeared in Fang Jilai's hands in an instant, and everything was as Titus Monroe expected. Nash Goldo was a little surprised and became more and more interested in Titus Monroe's eyes. Interesting, it's really interesting, did you see it? The smile on Nash Goldo's face became more and more wild, and he looked at Titus Monroe with burning eyes. It's not his fault. After all, this is the first time Nash Goldo has met someone with special eyes, even if the eyes are not strong. Fang Jilai caught the basketball, looked at Hausberger expressionlessly, and said calmly, "Are you ready?" Hausberg's eyes changed, and his defensive posture became more serious. At the same time, a wave of pressure also spread, and cold sweat continued to emerge from Hausberger's back, soaking his jersey. Is just the breath so oppressive? Cold sweat continued to break out on the top of Hausberg's head, and the aura exuded by Fang Lai made him feel extreme pressure. Suddenly, Fang Jilai disappeared in front of his eyes. Where are the people? Not good. Hausberg turned around in surprise and saw that Fang Jilai had broken through him and rushed to the inside. So fast. Fang Jilai threw the basketball into the basket before anyone could react. Oh, our young master Fang scored the first goal. The Black Emperor Dragons took the lead. The commentator responded quickly and explained the game. The audience started cheering after being stunned, and they never hesitate to applaud and shout. Kibari was so surprised that he froze on the spot and scored a goal without even reacting. Hausberg swallowed his saliva and said in surprise, "Okay, so fast." Dickie Anthony took a deep breath and said, "Be more careful next time and keep playing." The game continues, and the Vipers have the ball. Titus Monroe slowly advanced with the ball, his eagle eyes constantly scanning the situation on the court. Nash Goldo looked at this scene with an evil smile. "Let me see what you can do." Nash Goldo suddenly stepped forward to defend, constantly interfering with Titus Monroe's dribbling rhythm. Titus Monroe immediately noticed Nash Goldo's actions and immediately dribbled the ball away from Nash Goldo's steal. However, Nash Goldo did not stop and kept reaching out, trying to steal. Titus Monroe's dribbling rhythm was disrupted by Nash Goldo. In a critical situation, Dickie Anthony broke free from Zach's defense and ran towards the outside in large strides. Titus Monroe instantly noticed Dickie Anthony and passed the basketball to Dickie Anthony with difficulty. After this defense, Nash Goldo also figured out the function of Titus Monroe's eagle eye. Titus Monroe's eagle eye only has the function of observing the overall situation. There are no other special functions. After understanding all this, Nash Goldo suddenly lost interest. TSK boring. Dickie Anthony caught the pass and faced Zach at the three-point arc. Dickie Anthony pretended to test to the right, and then suddenly attacked from the left. Zach shifted his center of gravity slightly due to Dickie Anthony's tentative steps, but he quickly adjusted back to keep up with Dickie Anthony's movements. Dickie Anthony didn't seem to panic at all. After breaking through a little bit, he immediately jumped up. While Zach was still walking, he suddenly saw Dickie Anthony jumping up and was shocked. This height is terrible because Zach's center of gravity was still retreating. By the time he adjusted back to take off, Dickie Anthony had already thrown the basketball. "Here it comes, Dickie's snake Fang." Some spectators on the sidelines exclaimed. Brush. The basketball entered the basket steadily. Only then did Zach react. It turns out that Dickie Anthony's Serpent's Fang is a pull-up jumper. The only difference is the height. Dickie Anthony is nearly 2.03 meters tall and has a wingspan of nearly 2.15 meters. With such a height and wingspan, he should have been playing center, but Dickie Anthony did not choose to play center, but chose to play power forward. He has the same height and wingspan as a center, as well as jump shots on the move and precise inside and outside shots, making Dickie Anthony's jump shot very difficult to defend. This is also the reason why it is called Snake Fang. His shots are as venomous as snake teeth, driving people into despair. Chapter 124. Get ready to play ball possession conversion. Nash Goldo calmly dribbled the ball through half court. Looking at Titus Monroe defending him in front of him, Nash Goldo was not interested at all. After knowing the function of Eagle Eye, Nash Goldo lost interest in Titus Monroe. After seeing Nico running to the outside, Nash Goldo passed the basketball to him and then stood there and watched the show. Fang Jilai also stood on the court watching the show. After pulling Hausgerbo to the outside and giving Nico space for singles, Fang Jilai started watching the show. There was no way no one on the court could interest him, so he decided to continue playing casually. After Hongsu and Xiaozhao had almost figured out the rhythm of the 10,000 Vipers, he began to exert his strength and feed Hongsu and Xiaozhao the ball. After all, other people's fathers are seriously ill and they have to come to the game, so they have to let others perform no matter what. But if Nijimura fails to score several consecutive goals, Fang Jilai will give up feeding the ball and give the ball to someone who can score. When Nico got the ball, he didn't hesitate at all. He dribbled the ball and pretended to attack, but in fact he took a step laterally and immediately took off. Judith Gale's center of gravity moved back slightly, and when he reacted to defend, the basketball had already been thrown by Nico. The basketball flew over Judith Gale's fingers, just missing it. But everything is in Nico's plan. Nico doesn't like fancy offenses. He likes to score in the simplest way. If he cannot effectively break through or score within 3 seconds, he would pass the basketball back to Nash Goldo, who would reorganize it and never occupy the ball too much. Brush. The basketball entered the net steadily, making a crisp sound. Judith Gale slapped his head in annoyance. Damn it. It was just a little bit close. After blaming herself, Judith Gale turned to Nico and said, "You can't fool me with the next ball." Nico said a faint, "Oh," and turned around to defend himself. Transition of possession. Titus Monroe passed the basketball to Judith Gar and then pulled away, leaving room for the two to play one-on-one. Nijimura Shizuo paid attention to the actions on the field and said, "Their style of play." Alan put his hands behind his head and said, "You can see it too, right? They seem to be focusing on singles." Nijimura Shizuo nodded. He had to say that the configuration of the 10,000 Vipers was indeed very suitable for singles. Dickie Anthony, Hosberger, and Judith Gall serve as offensive firepower in isolation. Titus Monroe serves as the engine of the team. Kit Berry protects everyone. Even if the iron is broken, he can still use his extraordinary rebound sense to grab offensive rebounds and launch a second offense for everyone. It is indeed difficult to beat such a team that uses their individual abilities to the extreme. However, they met the Black Emperor Dragon team. Everyone in the Black Emperor Dragon team is not weak in singles. Moreover, Nash Goldo, Jason Theiber, and Fang Jilai, these three people can maximize their firepower. However, the three of them currently have no obvious desire to attack. They are all observing. To be precise, they are waiting for Hongsu and Xiao to observe. On the field, after Judith Gal got the ball, he didn't hesitate at all and ignored Nico, who was defending him. Squat down suddenly, leaned back at the waist, and put the basketball down firmly with both hands. Nico looked at the weird posture and didn't know how to defend. Judith Gar used her knees, waist, and arms at the same time to throw the basketball like a catapult. It was the first time that Nico saw such a shooting posture. He was stunned for a moment because Judith Gale's shot didn't take off at all. By the time he took off, the basketball had already been shot. Just like that, the basketball was thrown into the basket by Judith Gal's weird posture. Brush. After Nico saw the goal, he complained, "What the hell shooting posture?" Judith Gar immediately became unhappy and retorted, "How are you talking? This is my special skill, cannon shooting." Nico twitched the corner of his mouth, not knowing how to reply for a moment. After all, the name cannon shooting is indeed suitable for his shooting, but it is more or less abstract. The audience was too embarrassed to name the skill, and all fell silent. As long as you were happy. Nico, who had been holding it in for a long time, could only say this sentence in the end. Fang Jilai ignored the time and score, and then said to Zach, "Zach, attack." Zach immediately understood Fang Jilai's thoughts, nodded, and prepared to attack. Transition of possession. Nash Gordo dribbled the ball past half court and passed the ball to Zach, allowing Zach and Dicky Anthony to one-on-one. The reason for this is because Fang Jilai wants to quickly figure out Dicky Anthony's playing style and defensive status so that Nijimura can go on offense. Fang Jilai decided to give Zach a 3-goal opportunity to figure out Dicky Anthony's defensive status. Zach also understood Fang Jilai's thoughts and carried out 3 attacks very seriously. In the first offense, Zach used a single change of direction to get rid of Dicky Anthony's defense and shoot. For the second ball, Zach repeated his old tricks and tried to break through with a single change of direction. However, Dicky Anthony clearly reacted and the defense was not out of position. Helpless, Zach then turned around and opened the distance for a fadeaway jumper. But Zach underestimated Dicky Anthony's defensive coverage. With a height of more than 2 meters and a wingspan, Dicky Anthony's defensive range is greatly expanded. He was 1 position away from Zach and knocked down Zach's jumper. On the third ball, Zach used a double change of direction to completely shake off Dicky Anthony and enter the inside to score. Since then, Fang Jilai has understood Dicky Anthony's defensive status. First of all, because of Dicky Anthony's height and wingspan of more than 2 meters, his defense in a straight line becomes stronger. But the movement speed on the left and right sides is not very fast. In other words, Dicky Anthony is more suitable for defense or for defending players who are not fast. When encountering fast players, Dicky Anthony couldn't keep up with their pace. However, for the current Nijimura Shuzo, Dicky Anthony's defense is still terrifying. If the current Shuzo Nijimura wants to break through Dicky Anthony's defense, he will have to put in a lot of effort. After guarding against the attack of the 10,000 Vipers and giving the ball to the Black Emperor Dragons, Fang Jilai called a timeout. Beep. The Black Emperor Dragon team requests a timeout. Fang Jilai led everyone off the stage and immediately made arrangements. Nijimura replaces Zach. Senior Nijimura, you should have done your observation, right? Nijimura Shuzo took a deep breath and nodded seriously. Jilai, please observe. Fang Jilai nodded. Okay, get ready to play. Chapter 125 Father. I can score goals. Zach patted Hongsun Zezu on the shoulder and reminded him encouragingly. Come on, try your best to shift his center of gravity by changing directions. Hongsun Xiaozhao nodded seriously and thanked. Thanks for the reminder. Zach smiled slightly. Come on, just don't be unable to score a goal after coming on the field. The game continues. The Black Emperor Dragons have the ball. After seeing the Black Emperor Dragons make a substitution, Dicky Anthony's expression changed obviously. There has been a change of person. Is he stronger than the person just now? Thinking of this, Dicky Anthony's expression began to look ugly. Because Zach's breakthrough had already made him a little unable to parry, and now it was replaced by a stronger one, which doubled his pressure. But when the Black Emperor Dragons attacked, Dicky Anthony's mind changed. Why? Weaker than that person just now. Although Nijimura Shuzo used a drastic change of direction to break through Dicky Anthony. But Dicky Anthony clearly felt it, and felt that Nijimura Shuzo was weaker than Zach. Although Dicky Anthony doesn't understand the Black Emperor Dragon's thoughts, he will not give up this opportunity, an opportunity to chase points. In the next round, Dicky Anthony reached for the ball and got the basketball. Dicky Anthony didn't hesitate at all and used Snake's Fawn directly. With a height of more than 2 meters, a wingspan, and a jumping height that Hongsun Xiaozhao cannot match, Nijimura Shuzo could only watch helplessly as Dicky Anthony threw the basketball. In this situation, all Nijimura Shuzo could do was pray that Dicky Anthony's basketball wouldn't score. But it's a pity that Dicky Anthony's basketball entered the basket steadily. Hongsun Xiaozhao sighed slightly. What a terrifying physical talent. Next round, Nash Gordo passed the basketball to Shuzo Nijimura. The moment Hong Senshin caught the ball, he felt the basketball felt very good. This feels. After feeling the wonderful feel of the basketball in his hands, Nijimura Shuzo seemed to have lost his mind and unconsciously jumped to shoot. It was only after he took off that he realized something was wrong. He was not in a competition at Sakura Country Junior High School. This is a street court in the beautiful country. After Nijimura Shuzo reacted, the basketball had been blocked by Dicky Anthony. Dicky Anthony really couldn't figure out what was going on in Nijimura Shizo's mind. How dare he ignore his own pull-up jumper? In fact, it's not Nijimura's fault because Nash Gordo's pass just now was too comfortable. For a moment, Nijimura Shizo thought he was playing in Teikō and that the ball he caught was a ball passed by Akashi Sejiro. Fang Jilai was slightly stunned when he saw this scene. He didn't know what Hong Tsuenshio was thinking about the shot just now. Facing a power forward who is a head taller than him and whose wingspan far exceeds his, how dare he take off? In fact, the fact that Nash Gordo's pass can achieve this effect is thanks to Coach Victor and the Fang family's training equipment. The combination of the two greatly improved Nash Gordon's passing ability. Transition of possession. Everyone on the 10,000 Vipers seemed to have discovered that Nijimura couldn't defend Dickie Anthony. So as soon as halftime passed, Titus Monroe passed the basketball to Dickie Anthony. And Dickie Anthony lived up to expectations, ignoring Nijimura's defense and directly using Snake's Fawn. Nijimura Shizo had no way to deal with Dickie Anthony's Snake's Fawn. Even if he jumped with all his strength, Dickie Anthony's shot was still a palm's length away. There is no way. Nijimura Shizo had no choice but to give up defense and prepare to attack on the offensive end. But soon, Hongsu and Xiao was disappointed, because now he is very reluctant to face Dickie Anthony's defense. It takes multiple consecutive large changes of direction to break through and enter the inside line. After entering the inside lane, Nijimura had no way to make a jump shot, because the talent of Dickie Anthony behind him is really terrifying. Dickie Anthony can catch the ball with his basketball behind his back. Helpless, Nijimura had no choice but to rush to the inside, but there was another defensive gate inside, Kitbari. Ever since Nijimura made a breakthrough through Dickie Anthony and scored, Kitbari has been ready to defend Nijimura at all times. Although Hongsu and Shoshin faced Kitbari's defense, it could break through. But the breakthrough time is enough for Dickie Anthony to return to defense. There was no other way, so Nijimura had no choice but to pass the basketball to Jason Thibault, who scored the goal. After scoring goals like this continuously, Kitbari understood that this was not the case, so he no longer defended Nijimura Shizo. All defense was done by Dickie Anthony. But do you think this is good? No, it's even worse, because Dickie Anthony found that Nijimura's shooting speed was not fast. So he released his position and gave Hongsu space to build his shot. As a result, Hongsu and Xiao would not be able to use a large change of direction to mobilize its center of gravity to accelerate the breakthrough. However, when Nijimura wanted to try a shot, Dickie Anthony would rush forward and his shot would fly. The difference in height and wingspan is too big, and Nijimura Shizo cannot pose a threat to Dickie Anthony. In this way, Nijimura Shizo was completely blocked by Dickie Anthony on the defensive end, and then was constantly trained by Snake Fang on the offensive end. Hongsu and Xiao's mentality has undergone subtle changes. Dickie Anthony left him with no hope. Just when Hong Siyuan Xiao was about to feel broken, he saw his father in the stands out of the corner of his eye. After he saw his father's encouraging eyes, his mentality suddenly recovered. Just when Fang Jilai was about to give up the opportunity to attack Hongsu and Xiao, Hongsu and Xiao said, "Jilai, one goal." Fang Jilai turned his head in confusion and looked firmly at Hong Siyuan Xiao. "One goal. If this goal is not scored, I will not ask for any more goals in the future." Seeing Hongsu and Zuzu's persistence, Fang Jilai nodded and handed the next offensive opportunity to Hongsu and Zaizu. Nijimura took the ball and faced Dickie Anthony. Dickie Anthony knew the strength of Hongsu and Zaizu and reminded him with a slight smile, "You can't break through mine." Instead of holding the ball and playing alone, it's better to give the ball to your teammates and let them attack. Nijimura Zizu was unmoved by Dickie Anthony's reminder. He stared at the opponent he had been unable to break through, took a deep breath, and slowly closed his eyes. "Father, I can score goals." Chapter 126. Hongsun enters the zone for the second time. Dickie Anthony looked at Nijimura Zizu with his eyes closed in confusion, not knowing why. Dickie Anthony reached out and prepared to steal Nijimura Zizu, who was in a daze. Moment. Dickie Anthony felt a black lightning flash across his eyes, and Nijimura Shizo suddenly disappeared in front of his eyes. Dickie Anthony froze in place in surprise, shocked in his heart. Where are the people? Zack stood up suddenly off the field. A smile appeared on his face. You brat, you're included. Nash Goldo was slightly shocked, and then immediately opened the eye of the Demon King. After seeing the physical data of Niji Suinshio's body rising continuously and a sense of disobedience coming out, Nash Goldo smiled lightly. Zone. Fang Jilai was slightly startled, a little surprised. I was already prepared that Hong Suinshio would never be able to enter the zone again, but now I have entered again? That's right. Hong Suinshio Zhao once again entered the zone. Because of his father's presence and being blocked by Dickie Anthony, Nijimura had more faith in scoring in front of his father than he did for the first time. Therefore, Hong Suin build a second, enter zone. On the field, Nijimura's body burst with power, and in an instant, he broke through Dickie Anthony, who had been unable to score. After rushing into the paint, Nijimura Shizo jumped high and poured the basketball into the basket under Kitbari's shocked eyes. Kitbari was shocked. This boy, has he been hiding his strength? After the goal, the spectators who had watched the first game screamed in surprise. Here he comes. That boy who pretends to be a pig and eats the tiger is here again. Haha, I told you he was acting a long time ago, but you still don't believe me. It's okay now, you've been slapped in the face. On the field, after Dickie Anthony heard the conversation of the audience, he looked at Honks and Zayuzu in disbelief. Have you been acting? After the shock, there was extreme anger, a kind of played anger that burst out of Dickie Anthony's heart. So you have been playing with me? After feeling humiliated, Dickie Anthony's face changed drastically, and he decided to retaliate. Titus Monroe had just passed halftime with the ball when Dickie Anthony signaled for the ball. Titus Monroe passed the basketball. After Dickie Anthony caught the ball, he stared at Nijimura Zizu with fierce eyes. Nijimura Shizo suddenly felt inexplicable. He didn't know why Dickie Anthony was suddenly angry. Dickie Anthony jumped up again, ignoring Nijimura Shizo's defense, and used Snake's Fawn. Upon seeing this, Hongsun Zizu jumped up suddenly and raised his right hand high. Dickie Anthony looked at Hongsun Zizu, who was getting closer and closer to him in shock, his heart filled with disbelief. How could it be? In Dickie Anthony's shocked expression, Nijimura Shizo's hand brushed against the basketball. The basketball hit the basket and bounced high. The basketball bounced twice on the basket and then entered the basket. Seeing this scene, Nijimura Shizo shook his head helplessly and murmured, "It's a pity, it's just a little bit close." Dickie Anthony's pupils trembled slightly, and he said tremblingly, "You?" Hong Tzu turned his head in confusion. "What's wrong?" Dickie Anthony immediately shut his mouth when he saw this, turned around, and went back to defense. Ever since he thought Hong Suinshio Zao was playing a trick on him, he really had no desire to communicate with Hong Suinshio Zao. Nijimura Shizo looked at Dickie Anthony's back in confusion, feeling a little baffled. Transition of possession. Nash Goldo passed the basketball to Niji Siuen Zizu, preparing to let Niji Siuen Zizu get familiar with the zone again. After Nijimura received the ball, he faced Dickie Anthony's defense. He didn't panic, quickly dropped the ball, turned around, and broke through Dickie Anthony's defense cleanly. Hongsu and Shozwa broke into the inside and scored. When the ball was transferred, Dickie Anthony did not choose to jump on the spot this time. Instead, choose to break through from the right, then pull back with your right hand and use Snake's Fawn. Nijimura Shizo tried his best to stop it, but he could only watch Dickie Anthony shoot the basketball. However, it is a pity that Dickie Anthony's shot was a hit. Kit Berry jammed Jason Thiebaud and took advantage of the situation. After noticing the landing point of the basketball, Kitbari jumped high and prepared to pocket the basketball. Just when Kitbari thought he had secured the basketball, a pair of big hands stretched out from behind him and instantly caught the falling basketball. "Where are you looking, boy?" Jason Thieber picks melons over his head from behind Kitbari. After taking the basketball, he swung it forward and threw it into the hands of Nash Gordo, who was on a fast break. Dickie Anthony stood there, unable to believe that he actually missed the shot, and stayed there for a long time without moving. "I actually missed. What a joke. What a joke. No, Dickie's snake Fang actually missed. Titus Monroe said in shock. Judith Gale ran back suddenly, not forgetting to slap Titus Monroe on the head as he ran. You idiot, get back on defense. Titus Monroe reacted quickly and rushed towards his backcourt. The two of them ran quickly and actually got closer and closer to Nash Goldo. Nash Gordo deliberately slowed down because he was waiting. He was not waiting for the players of the 10,000 Vipers, but waiting for Nijimura Shojan, because now Hongsun Zayuzu is the favorite on the field. Sure enough, Nijimura Shizo suddenly rushed forward, passing through the three of them and sprinting towards the front court. Nash Goldo raised the corner of his mouth and passed the ball to Nijimura Shizo, who launched the attack. Suddenly, a figure emerged, causing Nash Goldo's smile to freeze slightly. It turned out to be Dickie Anthony, and Dickie Anthony was following Niji Cun Zaizu. His expression was very ferocious, and his eyes were fixed on the back of Hongsun Zhu. What a joke! What a joke! How dare you play with me? Poisonous snakes cannot be played with. Dickie Anthony kept roaring in his heart, and his running speed suddenly accelerated, and he actually caught up with Nijimura Zaizu. Moment. A familiar atmosphere swept across the entire stadium, and everyone in the Black Emperor Dragons team was familiar with this atmosphere. Nico stared at Dickie Anthony and murmured, 10,000 venomous snakes, venomous snakes, venomous snake's teeth. I should have thought of it earlier. That's why he calls himself a venomous snake. Nijimura Shizo stopped running. His eyes flashing with black lightning stared at Dickie Anthony in front of him and murmured, it's actually wild. Chapter 127, The Wildness of Venomous Snakes. At this time, Dickie Anthony looked ferocious, with a green light emitting from around his body, and the figure of a poisonous snake emerged behind him, lifelike. It's actually wild, which is kind of interesting. Nash Goldo looked at Dickie Anthony with interest and murmured. Zach sat off the court and watched the game on the court and said unconsciously, with the wild nature of the poisonous snake, it seems that Hongsuin's next attack will be difficult. On the field, Nijimura Shizo stared at Dickie Anthony, and he felt the dangerous aura from Dickie Anthony. Dickie Anthony seemed to be in a daze and kept muttering, what a joke, what a joke. Nijimura Shizo even thought that Dickie Anthony was crazy. Just as he was stunned, Dickie Anthony suddenly approached him like a poisonous snake. Upon seeing this, Nijimura Shizo immediately made a crotch dribble. Then he accelerated suddenly, like a black lightning, breaking through Dickie Anthony in an instant. Breakthrough, the audience exclaimed. Zach shook his head on the court and said to himself, poisonous snakes are not so easy to break through. On the field, after Nijimura Shizo broke through to Dickie Anthony and was about to join the ball, a dangerous breath came from behind him. Nijimura Shizo quickly moved the basketball from his right hand to his left hand, and the offensive action also stopped. Suddenly, Dickie Anthony appeared in front of Nijimura Shizo. The moment he appeared, Dickie Anthony immediately followed him. Nijimura quickly dribbled the ball to break through, but after every breakthrough, Dickie Anthony would immediately come up to defend. At the same time, he would continue to steal Nijimura. Nijimura Shizo tried to break through directly, but Dickie Anthony was able to make uninterrupted steals behind Nijimura Shizo. As a result, Nijimura's dribbling rhythm became very disordered. Fang Jilai frowned, his expression a little solemn. Although Shizo Nijimura opened the zone, zone does not mean invincibility. He just maximizes the performance of a player's strength. But if you encounter an opponent who is far superior to you, zone sometimes doesn't work very well. For example, the current Hong, Cun Zhao, and Dickie Anthony. Under normal circumstances, Dickie Anthony can be said to crush Hong, Cun Zhao in all aspects. Although Nijimura Shizai can use his speed to break through Dickie Anthony after opening the zone. But on the defensive end, Nijimura Shizo was still unable to effectively defend Dickie Anthony's Snake's Fang. This is because the gap in physical talent is too big. The Nijimura Shiju who opened the zone and the normal Dickie Anthony were supposed to be unable to guard anyone, and could only pray that the opponent's touch was not good and he missed a shot. But the situation is different now, because Dickie Anthony has turned on the wild nature, and it is still the Viper wild nature that is famous for being difficult to deal with. This resulted in Dickie Anthony's defensive weaknesses being repaired or even strengthened in disguise. As a result, the advantage of building a zone in Hongsuin will be gone. The thing is the same as Fang Jilai's idea. Under Dickie Anthony's snake-like defense, Nijimura shot the ball hard. After the strike, Kit Berry and Hosberger blocked Jason Thibault at the same time, making Jason Thibbert's movement extremely difficult. Dickie Anthony's eyes were locked on the basketball like a poisonous snake, and he jumped high and took the basketball down. After taking it down, Dickie Anthony rushed forward, but his speed is always slower than that of Hongsuin Shioju, who opened the zone. Nijimura Shuzo instantly caught up with Dickie Anthony and took a defensive stance. Dickie Anthony looked ferocious and kept muttering, "Playing, venomous snakes are not to be played with." Suddenly, the poisonous snake behind Dickie Anthony moved. It opened its green eyes and spit out the iconic letter from its mouth. The next second after spitting out the letter, the poisonous snake behind Dickie Anthony suddenly straightened its body and looked like it was attacking. At the same time, it opened its mouth, revealing two pointed fangs. The moment he showed his fangs, Dickie Anthony moved. He jumped high outside the three-point line, and his body stood up like a poisonous snake. His hands were like fangs as he threw the basketball. Snake's Fang. Nijimura jumped up hard, trying to block it, but due to the difference in height and wingspan, Nijimura's fingers were still a little away from the basketball. In the end, all you can do is watch the basketball go into the hoop. Brush. 3 points are valid. After the basketball entered the basket, Dickie Anthony continued to murmur, "No room for playing." The Viper behind Dickie Anthony retracted its upright body and closed its mouth, just spitting out messages. It kept spitting out snake letters. Its body made a defensive posture, and its green eyes were locked on Nijimura. Nijimura Shuzo felt a sense of fear, but the fear only lasted for a moment and disappeared the moment after it appeared. Hongsuin Shuzao murmured helplessly, "He is really a terrifying person, with terrifying physical talents and unruly wildness, as well as a good mental state." I don't blame Nijimura Shuzo for thinking this way, because Dickie Anthony's current state looks like a lunatic. He kept talking to himself, only looking at Hongsuin Shiojiao, and he didn't even look at his teammates. Nash Goldo noticed this. This was the first time he saw someone in this state after turning on the wild. Nash Goldo looked at Titus Monroe and said, "Hey boy, what's going on with your captain?" Titus Monroe gritted his teeth and replied, "Why should I tell you?" Nash Goldo was stunned and suddenly laughed. "You're quite interesting." Titus Monroe turned his head away from looking at Nash Goldo. "There's no way I could tell you." $10. There is a drawback to our captain's wildness. Nash Goldo smiled with satisfaction and said, "Continue." Titus Monroe looked at Dickie Anthony's figure seriously and continued. "Our captain's wildness is a poisonous snake. His wildness is different from other people's wildness. After other people turn on their wildness, they can control their bodies, thoughts, and movements, which means they can control their wildness. But our captain is different. His wildness will make him lose his mind and make him only think about his opponent. In other words, when he turns on his wild nature, he will fight his opponent to the end, with no other opponents in his mind, not even his teammates." Chapter 128, The Weakness of the Viper. However, if our boss regains his senses, his wild nature will disappear. Titus Monroe took a deep breath and silently said, "I'm sorry," to his boss, then turned to look at Nash Goldo and said, $10. Don't forget it. The corners of Nash Goldo's mouth raised. "Don't worry. I'm not someone who breaks my word." Nash Goldo looked at Dickie Anthony and thought to himself, funny wildness. This is the first time Nash Goldo has seen a player who loses his mind when he turns wild. Nash Goldo walked towards Fang Jilai's position, preparing to tell Fang Jilai the news. Fang Jilai saw Nash Goldo coming over and asked, "What's wrong?" Nash Goldo told Fang Jilai all the information he had just learned. Fang Jilai was slightly surprised after hearing this. Strength in exchange for reason. In the chat among a few people, the ball built by Hongsuin was struck again. But this time, Jason Thiber grabbed the offensive rebound. Kitbari and Haustrabo exclaimed, "Abnormal." After Jason Thiber grabbed the rebound, he turned around and dunked the basketball into the basket. After the dunk, Jason Thiber shouted, "Nijimura boy, what did you do?" Hongtsun Shiozao apologized sheepishly. "Sorry, his defense is indeed a bit difficult. I have to get used to it." Jason Shibo was helpless and shouted, "Then hurry up. Don't let your father down." Hongtsun Shiozao nodded repeatedly, "Yes." In the next game, Dicky Anthony completely suppressed Nijimura Shizo. The Snake's Fang, on the offensive end, makes Nijimura Shizo unable to defend at all. On the offensive end, Nijimura Shizo did adapt to Dicky Anthony's defensive rhythm at first and broke through Dicky Anthony and scored a goal. But later on, Dicky Anthony changed his posture like a poisonous snake, and his defensive state immediately became different. The defensive rhythm that Nijimura Shizo had adapted to before immediately lost its effect, and he once again fell into the entanglement of the poisonous snake. The game went like this until the end of the first quarter. On the way to the end of the game, Nash Gordo asked, "Leg, do you think Nijimura can break through Dicky's defense?" Fang Jilai shook his head. "I can't break through. Dicky's defensive rhythm is too strange for Nijimura Senpai." Indeed, Fang Jilai just discovered after watching the competition between Nijimura Shizo and Dicky Anthony on the court. Dicky Anthony can constantly change his defensive rhythm, which makes Shizo Nijimura unable to become familiar with Dicky Anthony's defensive rhythm. Every offense faces a different defensive rhythm. In addition, Dicky Anthony's height and wingspan far exceed Nijimura Shizo's height. The combination of the two completely locked down Hongtsu and Shiozhua, who opened the zone on the defensive end. However, Fang Jilai discovered something interesting while observing. That is, Dicky Anthony's attention after losing his mind was when Nijimura Shiozao didn't get the ball. When Nijimura isn't holding the ball, Dicky Anthony's attention will always be on Nijimura. But as soon as Nijimura Shizo gets the ball, Dicky Anthony's attention will instantly be locked on basketball. And when passing the ball, Dicky Anthony's attention will be diverted from the basketball for a short period of time. This short period of time is enough for Hongtsu and Zaizu to run out of a position. If these 2 points are taken advantage of, then Nijimura will have a way to break through Dicky Anthony. That is to find one person to respond, and the two of them cooperate to break through and score. The task of cooperating with Senior Nijimura will be left to you, Nash. Nash Goldo patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, Brother Lai. I'll take care of everything." The second quarter begins. Nijimura Zuzu stood up and prepared to play. After Victor's almost abnormal training, Nijimura's physical strength has been greatly improved. If you have to count, he can play a full quarter of the game in the zone. It's a quarter, not a game. Don't get confused. The zone just opened and Hongtsuan was built in the middle of the first quarter. Now, after resting for a while, his physical strength has recovered a little and he can continue to play in the second quarter. Fang Jilai and others decided to take over the game after Hongtsu and Shiozao reached exhaustion in the second quarter. Other side, Dicky Anthony turned wild as soon as he came on the court and started mumbling to himself. No room for teasing. Fang Jilai looked at Hongtsu and Shiozao and said, "Senior Hongtsuan, can you still open the zone?" Nijimura Shizo looked at his father, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. "Goal, goal. Open your eyes again." Black lightning began to appear in Niji Suinshio's eyes. Fang Jilai couldn't help but nodded. At the current stage, it seems that Hongtsu Zizu can already enter the zone independently with the help of the belief in scoring goals, which is undoubtedly a good thing. At the same time, I have to say that Hongtsu and Zaizu is also a genius. After entering the zone for the second time, I mastered the method of entering the zone independently, which can be said to be far beyond that of many geniuses. At the beginning of the second quarter, the Black Emperor Dragons had the ball. After Nash Goldo dribbled the ball through half the court, the corners of his mouth raised sharply, he looked at Titus Monroe and said, "Would you like to see it?" Titus Monroe was confused for a moment. "What?" Nash Goldo slapped the basketball with his right hand, pointed to his eyes with his left hand, and said arrogantly, "Want to see another pair of eyes?" After saying that, Nash Goldo's eyes changed instantly, and his emerald green eyes shrank instantly. Then there was a sudden change, and a golden halo appeared in his eyes. Eye of the Demon King. Nash Goldo opened the eye of the Demon King with a wild smile on his face and laughed. Take a good look. There's more than meets the eye. After saying that, Nash Gordon quickly dribbled the ball several times. Titus Monroe felt his center of gravity being constantly shifted. Sudden, a feeling of weightlessness came out, and Titus Monroe was completely knocked to the ground by Nash Goldo and did not get up for a long time. After falling down, Nash Goldo flicked his left hand and passed the basketball to Nijimura Shizo's hands, then quickly ran behind Dickie Anthony. Nijimura Shizo caught the basketball, and Dickie Anthony's attention instantly shifted from Nijimura Shizo's body to the basketball. Hong Sun Xiuzhao felt happy. Jilai's prediction was right. Nijimura Shizo suddenly passed the basketball. Dickie Anthony's eyes briefly followed the basketball. When he came back to his senses, Nijimura Shizo had disappeared. Chapter 129, Pendulum. Seeing that the target was lost, Dickie Anthony started to look around. When he turned around, all he saw was Niji Tsuinchio's figure taking off. Nash Goldo started at 0 frame and passed the basketball to Nijimura Shizo without any preparation. Came in with an alley-oop. After the goal, there was a noticeable silence on the court for a while before thunderous applause broke out. Judith Gal looked at this scene with an ugly expression. Are you actually trying to cooperate in this way? Transition of possession. The Vipers passed the basketball to Dickie Anthony, who immediately prepared to attack, but he suddenly froze. Nash Goldo opened the eye of the Demon King and stood in front of him. Little snake, the game is over. Titus Monroe's expression was stunned, and he was shocked. Switch defense. Hong Sun Zaizu defended Titus Monroe and sighed helplessly. There's really nothing I can do. After all, I can't stop him. Titus Monroe asked rhetorically. Can he defend Dickie's snake Fang? Hong Sun Xiuzhao smiled faintly. You guess. Dickie Anthony looked ferocious and murmured, hunting. The venomous snake shadow behind him immediately made an offensive gesture, opening its mouth wide and revealing its fangs. Nash Goldo raised the corners of his mouth, activated Eye of the Demon King, and saw through Dickie Anthony's movements in an instant. Snap! Dickie Anthony jumped up as if to shoot, but the basketball was intercepted by Nash Goldo. The venomous snake shadow behind Dickie Anthony seemed to have its mouth pressed down by a pair of big hands, forcing it to shut up. Titus Monroe opened his mouth wide and murmured in disbelief. Being was cut off. Is this what you said? Titus Monroe turned his head and wanted to talk to Nijimura Zuzu, but there was no figure of Nijimura Zuzu in front of him. Titus Monroe was shocked and quickly turned back to defend, shouting, "Back to defense!" Nash Goldo quickly ran towards the front court. This time he did not suppress his speed and ran towards the front court with full firepower. How is that possible? Were you all acting before? Judith Gal followed Nash Goldo and watched Nash Goldo getting further and further away from him. Nash Goldo slowed down when he was about to catch up with Nijimura Shizo. He activated Eye of the Demon King to observe the short future. After seeing the best catch point established by Nijimura, Nash Goldo started at 0 frames and passed the basketball without any warning. Brush. The basketball flew across the sky, accurately fell into the hands of Hong Sun Zizu, and was finally poured into the basket by Hong Sun Zizu. Collapse. The audience continued to cheer and did not hesitate to applaud. In the next round, Dickie Anthony lost his mind and started talking to himself. How could it be? How could it be? While muttering to himself, he asked for the ball again and faced Nash Goldo. The result was no exception. The basketball was intercepted by Nash Goldo, who turned on the Eye of the Devil. Nash Goldo stole the ball and passed the basketball to Fang Lai. Fang Jilai instantly opened the Eye of Truth and observed everyone's position. A ripple spread instantly, and the audience and members of the Black Emperor Dragon team, who had never seen Fang Jilai use this move, were stunned. The audience began to exclaim, "What skill is this? Is this Mr. Fang's skill?" Why you feel like you've been seen through? Yeah, I feel like my red underwear was seen today. No, I just docked it this morning. Master Fong won't know about it and will dislike me, right? On the field, Nash Gordo felt a familiar breath, which made him tremble. This aura, I didn't expect Lai Ge to have a special pair of eyes, and they are far superior to mine. Nash Gordo was shocked. He didn't expect that Fang Lai had a pair of eyes that were even more powerful than him. The Viper's Titus Monroe feels like he's broken. Seeing two pairs of eyes that were far superior to mine in one day was an extraordinary shock. Fang Jilai did not choose a fast break, but slowly dribbled the ball through the half. Hausgerbo quickly returned to defense and guarded Fang Jilai nervously. Fang Jilai's face was expressionless. He kept dribbling the ball in his hands, and his center of gravity began to shift from left to right, making people confused. Hausgerbo was constantly shifting his center of gravity, sometimes left and sometimes right, like a pendulum that kept swinging. Finally, Fang Jilai suddenly broke through from the left side. Hausgerbo's center of gravity could not be adjusted completely. He lost his center of gravity and fell to the ground, like a pendulum falling to the ground. Judith Gal's complexion changed drastically, and she murmured, "House." Felt like a pendulum. This is Fang Jilai's offensive skills. Pendulum, but Fang Jilai didn't know all this. Fang Jilai just did a few dragging steps. After Fang Jilai broke through and entered the inside line, Kitbari immediately stepped forward to cover the defense. Fang Jilai didn't panic at all. He glanced at the basket, pretended to join the ball with his hands, and made a gesture of worshipping Buddha. But in Kitbari's eyes, Fang Jilai was in a shooting position. So he jumped up and wanted to block the shot, but when he jumped up, he was completely stunned. After Fang Jilai fired Kitbari, he made an easy pick and the basketball entered the basket steadily. Another magical skill of Fang Jilai. Fantasy, all Fang Jilai's fake actions seemed real to others, like an illusion. Of course, Fang Jilai didn't know this either. He just felt that he made a few fake moves and others flew away. Next round. Dickie Anthony still did not believe in evil. Facing Nash Gordo, who had activated the Demon King's eyes, he continued to use his venomous snake's fang without hesitation. The result was also very obvious. The poisonous snake had its teeth pulled out by the devil and completely lost its attack power. The snake that has had its fangs removed is still slightly venomous, but it is nothing to be afraid of. The game is over, little snake. Nash Gordo laughed and organized a fast break again, and Nijimura made a dunk. After this round, Dickie Anthony's Viper completely lost its attack power and dissipated. Dickie Anthony was also forced out of the wild, simply put, woken up. Dickie Anthony, who woke up, shook his head unwillingly. I didn't expect that even if you turn on the wild nature, you would lose so completely. Although Dickie Anthony will lose his mind when he turns wild, it does not mean that he has lost his memory. He still knew all the things he experienced after turning on his wild nature, but he just couldn't control it. But it is precisely because of this that he is so unwilling and desperate. Chapter 130, The 10,000 Vipers Are Defeated. Dickie Anthony's unwillingness goes beyond just not being able to beat the Black Emperor dragons. What's more, he is unwilling to control his wild nature. Whenever he turns on his wild nature, he completely loses control of his body. He could only watch his body make a series of movements, but he couldn't control it. The only thing he could control was to forcefully exit the wild state. In the past, he would retreat after defeating his opponent. But today, he was forcefully beaten back to normal by his opponent. Facing Nash Gordo's defense, his fangs completely lost their power, transformed into a toothless snake without teeth. This is his unwillingness. It wasn't Nash Gordo's suffocating defense that made him feel hopeless, but Fang Jilai and Jason Sieber. After he turned on his wild nature, he felt an extremely dangerous aura in Jason Sieber's body. He knew very well that it was wildness, a wildness that far exceeded him. He originally thought that Jason Thibault's wildness was already the best in the world, until he saw Fang Jilai. He didn't feel any other breath on Fang Jilai's body. Some have only one breath, a breath of despair. He felt that his own wildness might not even be able to breathe in front of Fang Jilai's wildness. After learning the news, he fell into despair. He knew very well that today's game was a 100% defeat. The only thing he can do is to score more points so that his team's loss will not be so ugly. That's why he remains wild. However, when he was continuously defended by Nash Goldo, he knew that Fang Jilai and the others no longer planned to let him score. So he quit his wild state and quietly waited for defeat. On the field, Fang Jilai and others continued to feed Hongsu and Zayuzu in the second quarter. Let Nijimura Shiozao keep attacking and scoring goals. Dicky Anthony knew the outcome of the game, so he accepted his fate, put on a show of defense, and then allowed Nijimura to break through and score. The members of the 10,000 Vipers once asked him what happened, and he told everyone about the result. Everyone fell into silence instantly after hearing this, a little afraid to accept the facts. But in the next game, they accepted, because the construction of Hongtsuan is exhausted. Beep. The game is over. The Black Emperor Dragon team wins. The score is 108-30. All the members of the 10,000 Vipers collapsed on the ground and looked at the score as if they were resigned to their fate. All 30 points were scored in the first and second quarters. Nearly all were acquired by Dicky Anthony, because in the second half, just now, the Black Emperor Dragons made them fully understand what despair is. Titus Monroe's Eagle's Eye is completely blind, completely dominated by Nash Goldo's Eye of the Demon King. Coupled with Nash Goldo's unprepared pass, the Vipers had no time to react. Jason Thibault no longer hides it and fully demonstrates his strength. With the blessing of God's body, it bombed the inside of the 10,000 Vipers. Fang Jilai scored easily, using just a few skills to make everyone think. Even his super fast shooting was given a name, called Instant Hit. Zach and Nico fired frequently from outside, setting off a wave. Judith Gar tried to use his cannon shot to relieve the pressure on the team, but Fang Lai completely shattered the plan. Fang Jilai and Nico switched defenses, completely blocking the last attack of the 10,000 Vipers. Since then, the fangs of the poisonous snake have been completely pulled out, and the game has been won by the Black Emperor Dragon team without exception. After the game, Dicky Anthony came to Hongsu Zizu, stretched out his hand, and said with relief, "Congratulations on your win, but I hope you won't play tricks on others just because of your strength. You obviously have strength. Why do you have to pretend?" Nijimura Shizo raised his hand in confusion and shook Dicky Anthony's hand, not knowing what he was talking about. Zach reacted and explained, "I'm afraid you are wrong. Nijimura is indeed very good. The reason why he became different at that time is because he entered a strengthening mode. He was not trying to tease you." Dicky Anthony looked stunned and said doubtfully, "Yeah." Nijimura Zuzu understood what Dicky Anthony meant and nodded. "So that's what happened. Zach was actually right. I entered a strengthening mode at that time, and I wasn't just pretending." After Dicky Anthony understood the reason, he touched his head shyly. It turned out that he had made a mistake in everything. He thought Hongsu and Shiozhua was just pretending to be a dish, but he didn't expect it to be a real dish. But you are very powerful for being able to break out in that situation. I hope we can make friends. After saying that, Dicky Anthony took out his mobile phone and prepared to exchange contact information with Hongsu and Shiozao. What an honor. Of course, Nijimura was very happy to take out his mobile phone and exchange contact information with Dicky Anthony. The two also formed a deep friendship and would play ball and eat together whenever they had time. Time flies, and 1 year has passed in the blink of an eye. The Black Emperor Dragons also continued to compete in the street ball circles of the beautiful country during this year. He has left a resounding reputation in the street ball circle. Except for Fang Jilai, who is struggling to grow up, everyone else on the Black Emperor Dragons team is training hard. The strength is also growing rapidly, and Hongsu and Shiojian is no exception. Now Nijimura Shizo can freely enter zone mode as long as he wants to score goals. Moreover, his physical strength has been greatly strengthened, and he can already play a full quarter and a half with the zone open. Playing a full quarter and a half in zone mode can be said to be terrifying. After all, no one in the original game can even play a full quarter in full zone mode. Fang Jilai himself also roughly understood what the skills that he had imagined by others were in this year. The first is his divinity, Black Dragon. The condition for unlocking divinity is that Fang Jilai is ready to compete seriously. As long as he is serious, his divinity will be revealed in the eyes of others. Of course, in the eyes of different people, Fang Jilai's divinity will also change, and ordinary people will only see a black mist. A normal basketball player would see a huge black shadow with blood-red eyes. Only top players like Nash Goldo and Jason Thibault can see Fang Jilai's divinity, Black Dragon. But whether this is the full form of Fang Jilai's divinity, Fang Jilai doesn't know. Because so far, only Jason Thibault and Nash Goldo can see the Black Dragon. Chapter 131 Chance Encounter. The second skill that Fang Jilai came up with was the Eye of Truth from the beginning. This skill is released when Fang Jilai is observing the overall situation. It will release layers of ripples. The ripples will scan everyone on the field, making those on the field feel like they're being seen through. The third one is Wall of Steel. As mentioned before, this is a simple defense with a weak side hand, but in the eyes of others, it appears as a tall wall of steel. The fourth one is Speed Bump, which was a skill that appeared when defending Kodorohiyama. When Fang Jilai puts his hand on the opponent's waist to prevent the opponent from breaking through, a piece of green mucus will appear in the opponent's eyes to prevent the opponent from attacking. The fifth one is Deprivation, which is a skill created by the opponent when Fang Jilai uses blindfolding to defend, which can make the opponent lose his eyesight instantly. The sixth one is Pendulum, which uses dragging steps to shift the defender's center of gravity. Then when breaking through, the defender will completely lose its center of gravity and fall to the ground like a pendulum. The seventh one is Illusion. All Fang Jilai's fake actions will become very realistic in the eyes of others, like a fantasy. The last one is Fang Jilai's Quick Shot, Instant Hit, a super fast shot that others have given this name. These are the skills that Fang Jilai has summarized in this year and that others have imagined. Hey, I really don't know how you guys figured it out. Why am I the only one who can't see the special effects? Fang Jilai was lying on the bed and sighed, because when he heard these descriptions from others, Fang Jilai knew that these special effects must be very cool, but Fang Jilai just couldn't see them. Helpless, Fang Jilai sighed and lay on the hotel bed and fell asleep. It turned out that Fang Jilai and others came to other cities in the beautiful country because of the competition and booked a hotel to rest in preparation for the competition tomorrow morning. Early the next morning, Fang Jilai led other members of the Black Emperor Dragon team to the competition venue. They won the game effortlessly with a score of 112-29, directly knocking the strongest local street team to the ground and blasting the hammer. Afternoon. Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi were about to go shopping, but Midorima Shintarō also went out and met Fang Jilai, Satsuki Momoi. Jilai Momoi, what a coincidence. Let's go shopping together. Hongsu and Xiaozhao happily greeted Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai rolled his eyes and said, "Senior Hongsu, please stop being a light bulb and go shopping by yourself." Yeah, and I went to play. After saying that, Fang Jilai walked forward with Satsuki Momoi, ignoring Hongsu and Zizu. Hongsu and Xiaozhao licked his hair helplessly. Oh, I'm disgusted. Hongsu and Shoujo had no choice but to wander around this city alone. Don't mention it. There's really a lot to do here. Hongsu and Zizu said with emotion while shopping. Bang! Collapse. Suddenly, the sound of a dunk interrupted Hongsu and Zizu's thinking and attracted Hongsu and Zizu's attention. Hongsu and Xiaozhao turned around and saw three people, two men and one woman. When Hongsu and Zizu saw the woman, he couldn't help but sigh. The capital is strong. It's no wonder that Hongsu and Xiaozhao reacted like this, because the woman has blonde hair, rich capital, and amazing thunder. The two men, one red and one black, were dueling on the field. On the field, the woman kept talking outside the field, but the two people on the field listened to the woman's words very seriously and made changes. Seeing this scene, Hongsu and Zizu raised the corner of his mouth slightly, became slightly interested, and stood there to observe. On the field, the black-haired man attacked, but he kept using fake moves to shake off the red-haired man, and finally scored. Seeing this, Hongsu and Xiuzhao couldn't help but nodded and made unconscious comments in his heart. The fake moves are quite satisfactory, and the basic skills are quite solid. It was the red-haired man's turn to attack, and he exploded suddenly, using his speed to break through the man with black hair and finally scored a dunk. Hongsu and Xiuzhao was slightly startled when he saw this, and thought in his mind, this physical talent is good, he is a good prospect. Hongsu and Xiuzhao couldn't help but compare the two, and finally found out. People with red hair are much more talented than people with black hair. However, Niji Tsunshio felt a familiar feeling on the black-haired person. This feeling is very similar to my own before, as if I could obviously go further, but my talent has lowered my upper limit. But Nijimura Shizo was lucky. He broke the upper limit with his belief and entered the world of the same zone as the geniuses. He was even more proficient in the zone than many geniuses. After a long time, the red-haired and black-haired men stopped their duel and both looked at where Nijimura was building. Has he been watching it for a long time? The red-haired man spoke calmly. The man with black hair had an imperceptible smile on his face. Yeah, Taiga, I've been watching it for a long time. Alex Garcia stepped forward and asked, "What's wrong?" Kagami Taiga turned his head and pointed at Nijimura Shizo and said, "That man has been watching us for a long time." Alex Garcia turned his head, glanced at Hongsu, and then said, "Others can just watch it. After all, it is other people's freedom." "That's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" "Taiga." Kagami Taiga slapped the basketball with both hands, looked at Nijimura Shizo with ardent eyes, and said excitedly, "I feel that guy is very strong. I want to have a one-on-one fight with him." Alex Garcia murmured doubtfully, "Yeah." Nijimura Zizu, who was watching the game outside the court, was puzzled. "Why did you stop?" Hey, what do you mean by looking at me?" Nijimura Zizu suddenly felt a sense of being voyeuristically discovered and quickly turned around to leave. At this time, "Hey, that little brother over there." Alex Garcia's loud voice came out, shouting to stop Hongsuen's repairs. Hongsuen Shuzhao turned his head in confusion, looked around, pointed at himself blankly, and asked, "You're calling me?" Alex Garcia raised her hands high and shook them. The big thunder on her chest swayed, and she shouted, "It's you. Can you come over here?" Nijimura Shizo wanted to leave, but seeing that he had been discovered, he reluctantly walked into the stadium and came to the front of Kagami Taiga and the others. "I didn't mean to look at you. I just happened to see you while passing by," Hongsu and Xiuzhao said embarrassedly. Alex Garcia waved his hand and said with a smile, "It's okay. I stopped you just because my apprentice wants to fight you in a duel." Chapter 132, Countdown. Nijimura Shizo turned his head in confusion, looked at Kagami Taiga's excited eyes, and said hesitantly, "Are you talking about him?" Kagami Taiga nodded repeatedly. "That's right, brother. I want to have a one-on-one fight with you." Nijimura Shizo wanted to refuse, but after looking at Kagami Taiga's fiery eyes, he somehow agreed. Okay. The two quickly took up their positions and prepared for a duel. Nijimura Shizo gave the right to serve to Kagami Taiga, and he prioritized defense. While on defense, Hongsu and Xiuzhao regained his composure. "Why did I just agree? It's strange, forget it. Solve it as soon as possible and go back early." Kagami Taiga's eyes were burning, and he was excitedly preparing to attack. Himuro-chan was also watching this scene from the sidelines and asked, "Do you think Taiga can win?" Alex Garcia looked serious, and after a moment he said in a deep voice, "I don't know. I felt a familiar yet unfamiliar aura on that little brother. It seems to be very similar to you, but there's a different feeling." Himuro Tatsuya looked stunned and murmured, "Familiar, yet strange. Let's watch the game. The game has begun." Time flies by, and another year has passed. In this year, the reputation of the Black Emperor Dragons took off completely, and the whole country knew that there was such a street ball team that was comparable to an NBA professional team. Among them, Nash Goldo and Jason Thiber were once hailed by the beautiful country as the future leaders of the beautiful country. However, the two of them can only be from the future. The current leader already exists, and that is Fang Jilai. The media in the beautiful country has evaluated Fang Jilai as the first person of the young generation in the beautiful country. Some even said, as long as the eldest son of the Fang family is willing to enter the NBA, he will directly become an all-star player. A team scout once published a scouting report on Jilai. The report read, advantages. The player has shooting speed, shooting accuracy, and physical fitness that are far beyond ordinary people. He has a good overall view, is competent in various positions, and can adapt well to the intensity of the league. Disadvantages. No obvious disadvantages. After the scouting report was issued, the beautiful country immediately exploded. Players without flaws can be said to be the only ones in existence, and everyone was cheering for Fang Jilai. Various teams in the NBA even offered Fang Jilai sky-high contracts and promised that as long as Fang Jilai reaches the age of 18, he will be the team boss if he joins the team. They are willing to build the team around Fang Jilai and listen to Fang Jilai's opinions when selecting and laying off players. In other words, as soon as Fang Jilai joins the team, he has the right to order the team's players to stay or leave. Having this power means that there is only Fang Jilai as the boss in the team, and no one can disobey Fang Jilai's orders. In fact, everyone knows that the reason why these teams are crazy about Fang Jilai is not just because of Fang Jilai's strength. Another point is because of Fang Jilai's status, heir to the Fang family. It can be said that as long as you get Fang Jilai, it is equivalent to getting huge traffic and wealth. After all, the Fang family's reputation in the beautiful country is well known to everyone, and the Fang family's ability can even influence the thinking of the beautiful country's army. It can be said that the country is extremely wealthy. In this way, Fang Jilai has stayed in the beautiful country for 2 years. After counting the time, it is time to return to the cherry blossom country. This day, Fang Jilai found his father Fang Gaoxian and told Fang Gaoxian about the situation. Dad, I want to go back to Sakura country. Fang Gaoxian sat next to Yushiyu and said with a smile, why? Do you miss your friends? Fang Jilai nodded, sat on the other side of the sofa and said, that's right. The main thing is that the beautiful country has done almost the same thing, and the team has become the strongest street ball team in the beautiful country. Fang Gaoxian took a sip of tea and said, okay, things in beautiful country are almost settled. It's time to go to Sakura country to make plans. Fang Jilai was stunned. Dad, you mean? Fang Gaoxian laughed. Yes, our whole family will go to Sakura country together, but your mother and I will go later. Now you can go alone first. Fang Jilai smiled when he saw this. Thank you very much, Dad. Fang Gaoxian waved his hand. Okay, go ahead. I'll help you arrange your flight. You can take care of all your affairs today. Fang Jilai nodded and prepared to go out to arrange things for the team. Fang Gaoxian suddenly stopped Fang Jilai. Wait a minute, shall I? Fang Jilai turned his head doubtfully. What's wrong? Have you decided which school you will study in high school? Not yet. That's good. I have already arranged the school for you. To be precise, I have arranged the school for you, Satsuki and your senior. Fang Jilai was stunned. Dad, what school did you arrange for us? Fang Gaoxian smiled mysteriously and said, keep it secret. Anyway, you three are in the same school. As for which one it is, you will find out when you return to Sakura country. I will arrange for Butler Sue to pick you up. You can ask Butler Sue yourself then. Fang Jilai rolled his eyes and said helplessly, Dad, you're starting to whet your appetite again. Fang Gaoxian laughed. After all, surprises should always be saved until the end. Go quickly and don't waste time. Fang Jilai nodded helplessly. Okay. After saying that, he turned around and left, going to find the team to arrange follow-up arrangements. After Fang Jilai left, Yushiyu glanced at Fang Gaoxian angrily. Are you really going to die if you tell your son? Fang Gaoxian smiled faintly, touched Yushiyu's head, and said, it's just a sellout. Yushiyu lay down in Fang Gaoxian's arms and asked gently, you said the people you found for your son can do it? Fang Gaoxian suddenly burst into laughter, and the laughter resounded throughout the mansion, and he continued laughing for nearly 5 seconds before stopping. As a businessman, I never only look at the bad side of things. Those people may be scum and evil people in the eyes of others, but in my eyes, they are the best sword. A sword to protect my son. Snap! A crisp slap came out. Jin, you big-headed devil. You laughed into my ears and almost made me deaf from laughter. Get up. Honey, I was wrong. I will never laugh again. Get into the room. No, honey. I just handed it in yesterday. No. Chapter 133, Pick Up Fang Jilai, came to the team and told everyone that he and others were preparing to leave. Under everyone's reluctant eyes, Fang Jilai arranged the follow-up tasks. From now on, you can just go as usual. When it's time to train and compete, Nash will be the captain for the time being. I hope you know what you want. After Fang Jilai arranged everything, he went out for a dinner with everyone, which was considered the last dinner in a while. Early the next morning, Fang Jilai took Satsuki Momoi and Midorima Shintarō into his private plane and prepared to return to Sakura country. Sitting on the plane, Hongsuin Shiozao sighed with emotion as he watched the beautiful country getting smaller and smaller. I didn't expect time to fly by so fast. 2 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Fang Jilai couldn't help but nodded. Yes, it has been 2 years, 15 years to be precise. Fang Jilai has been in this world for 15 years, and he has completely accepted life in this world. There are people he loves here, and people who love him, and every day is fulfilling and relaxing. After more than 100 chapters, Fang Jilai once again opened his system panel. The system panel has changed dramatically over the years. Host, Fang Jilai. Age, 15. Height, 198. Weight, 99 kilograms. Wingspan, 218. The first is height. Fang Jilai, who is 15 years old, is already 198 centimeters tall. His wingspan has also reached a terrifying 218, which can be said to be an explosion of static talent. Fang Jilai himself is also aware of the changes in his strength over the years. It can be said that Fang Jilai now has the ability to enter the NBA. While Fang Jilai was still thinking, Hongsuin Shiozao suddenly said, I really don't know how my juniors are doing. Fang Jilai smiled faintly. I'm afraid they have won 3 consecutive championships, but I don't know if they follow my advice. Suggestion? Midorima Shintarō asked in confusion. Fang Jilai nodded. Yes, I gave each of them some advice before I left. Why? Because I'm afraid they are too narrow-minded. Hongsuin Shiozao didn't understand Fang Jilai's words. Fang Jilai was not in a hurry and slowly said, if you think about it carefully, if several geniuses from across the era are in a team and continue to win, no opponent can limit them. They can easily beat their opponents by tens or even hundreds of points in every game. Will their mentality change? Hongsuin Shiozao thought for a while and then said, isn't this the same situation as us? Isn't this the case when we played against other street ball teams before? Fang Jilai shook his head. The difference is Nash and the others know what they want, and they know that they are still far away from the professional arena. They could feel a big mountain in front of them, and they could see the big mountain clearly. But Akashi and others are different. The things they see are too narrow, and they can't see the big mountain at all. When a person has a narrow vision, what will they do? Hongsuin Shiozao thought for a while and said, sustaining the status quo? Fang Jilai nodded. Yes, if they settle for the status quo, they will feel that they are invincible and no one can defeat them. So they waste their talents and start doing nothing every day. Hongsuin Zaizu thought about it carefully and found this possibility, but he still raised questions. I think Coach Platinum won't let them become like this, right? Fang Jilai continued. What if Coach Platinum falls ill? Sick? Fang Jilai nodded. In fact, before leaving Sakura country, Fang Jilai once thought about making platinum farming better, but there was no way. Because disease is something that is simply impossible to predict, even if you use the best medical equipment to treat Platinum Genzo. However, during the treatment period, Platinum Genzo was still unable to manage the team, which is why Fang Jilai said that. A year ago, Jilai received a message from his subordinates. Platinum Gungzhou fell ill. After learning the news, Fang Jilai knew that the era of miracles in the original work had come to a darkening stage. But Fang Jilai didn't take care of it, and he didn't bother to take care of it because it was very troublesome. Fang Jilai had already decided that if everyone in the Age of Miracles turned dark as in the original work, Fang Jilai would wake them all up himself. But are things really the same as in the original? Come on, it looks like I'm going to teach those brats a lesson when I return home. Nijimura Shuzo said with a smile. Fang Jilai shook his head and retorted, not necessarily. If they listened to my suggestion, they wouldn't be like this. If they didn't, give them a beating. Hongsun Zaiza nodded. Okay, I'll follow you. Fang Jilai nodded. Okay, by the way, how is uncle now? Hongsun Xiaozhao opened his mouth and said, My father has settled down after returning to China. It turns out that Hongsun Xiaozhao's father recovered from his illness a year ago and returned to Japan to start a new life. Hongsun Xiaozhao decided to follow Fang Jilai because of his debt to Fang Jilai. His father did not stop him, but supported him because he was a lifesaver. After hearing this, Fang Jilai nodded. That's good. Satsuki Momoi whispered softly in Fang Jilai's arms. Fang Jilai quickly made a shushing gesture, and after making sure that Satsuki Momoi was not awakened, he whispered, Stop talking. Ye fell asleep. Nijimura Shuzo nodded, made a shut-up gesture with his right hand, and then began to fall asleep. The Fang family's private plane flew across the sky and slowly landed at the airport that had been prepared in advance. Fang Jilai took Satsuki Momoi and Nijimura Shuzo off the private plane. After getting off the plane, Fang Jilai saw Butler Sue's figure and a strange figure next to Butler Sue. The three of them walked up to Butler Sue, and Fang Jilai said, Butler Sue. Butler Sue bowed respectfully and said, Welcome, master. Fang Jilai's eyes moved to the person next to Butler Sue. This man has a wild black whip and gloomy eyes, looking very fierce. Fang Jilai didn't recognize who this person was for a moment and asked, Butler Sue, this is... Nijimura Ziza looked at the man's face carefully and said a little uncertainly, Haizaki. Only then did Fang Jilai realize, this is not the Haizaki Shogo with a special code. Chapter 134 Memories of Haizaki Shogo. Haizaki Shogo touched his head with a smile on his face. I thought you had forgotten me. Fang Jilai frowned. Haizaki, what's wrong with your hair? Haizaki Shogo smiled sheepishly. Lai Ge, I did this hair because I think it looks good. Bang! Nijimura Shuzo raised his foot and was kicked to the ground by Haizaki Shogo. After Haizaki Shogo fell to the ground, he angrily asked Nijimura, Hongsun, what are you doing? Nijimura Shuzo squinted his eyes, made a fist with his left hand, pressed his fingers with his right hand to make a click-click sound, and walked towards Haizaki Shogo step by step with a smile on his face. Don't you even call me senior now? What are you doing? You're just 1 year older than me. Wait. I'm wrong. The screams resounded throughout the airport, which was extremely miserable. Fang Jilai helplessly held his forehead and murmured, These two living treasures. Satsuki Momoi stood aside and covered her mouth and snickered. Lai, maybe the two of them haven't seen each other for a long time. Where are the friendly greetings? Who taught you to say hello like this? Fang Jilai looked at the screaming Haizaki Shogo and turned his head to Satsuki Momoi. You are the living king of hell. He walked up to the two of them and stopped him. Stop it, Nijimura-senpai. Nijimura Shuzo then stopped his hand, stood up, clapped his hands, and said, Hurry up and change your hair back. I don't like it no matter how I look at it. Haizaki Shogo lay on the ground, crying without tears. I see. Fang Jilai smiled helplessly, feeling pity for Haizaki Shogo's experience. There was no way. Hong Sunchio's training in the Black Emperor Dragon team was huge, and Victor's teaching was different from other people's teaching. He not only teaches technique, but also boxing. In his words, this is to practice the player's ability to resist hitting. Boxing training can effectively improve the body's resistance when being beaten. In this way, you will not be easily injured when encountering those who use small movements or flagrant fouls on the court. It is precisely because of this reason that the combat effectiveness of Hongsu and Xiuzhua has increased dramatically. It's not Fang Jilai Chue. The current Hongsuan build can easily defeat 3 King Feng Dahue. Aomine Daiki has also become a unit of measurement. Now I can only blame Haizaki Shogo for his bad luck. Get in the car, and let's talk in the car. Fang Jilai said. Then everyone got in the car, and Fang Jilai began to ask what he wanted to know. Haizaki, Why did you come pick me up at the airport? Fang Jilai asked doubtfully. Haizaki Shogo smiled hee and said, because I am Lai Ge's teammate. Hongsu and Xiuzhao was stunned for a moment and said, we don't even know where we are going. How can you be our teammate? Haizaki Shogo looked at Butler Su, and after receiving Butler Su's affirmative look, Haizaki Shogo took everything out on a tray. Actually, I have been Lego's teammate a long time ago. Nijimura Shuzo patted his head. Your junior high school students were teammates with us. What nonsense are you talking about? Fang Jilai stopped Hongsu and Xiuzhao's hand and said, listen to him. Haizaki Shogo covered his head pitifully and said, yes, you waited until I finished. Hongsu and Zaizu touched his head in embarrassment. You continue. Haizaki Shogo then continued. Brother Lai, do you remember the first time we fought? Remember what happened? Actually, after that fight, I was very unconvinced when I came out of the hospital. Haizaki Shogo said as he fell into memories. Haizaki Shogo's perspective of memories. Damn it, I must take revenge. Haizaki Shogo walked out of the hospital, muttering unconvinced. Sudden, 3 men walked up to him and blocked his way. Haizaki Shogo himself was furious and immediately yelled, go away. Don't take my advice. The 3 men looked at each other and took out something from their waists. Haizaki Shogo immediately became honest after seeing the appearance of the thing clearly. What the 3 men pulled out turned out to be guns. Haizaki Shogo seemed to change his face and said flatteringly, 3 eldest brothers? What do you want from the younger brother? One of the 3 men spoke. My master has something to do with you, so come with us. Haizaki Shogo showed no intention of resisting in the face of the black gun muzzle and followed the 3 men into the car obediently. Haizaki Shogo arrived outside a mansion with the idea of going to the west. Haizaki Shogo looked at the mansion and fell into surprise. A man pushed Haizaki Shogo and urged, go quickly. Haizaki Shogo quickly recovered and followed the 3 men into the mansion. After arriving at a room in the mansion, the 3 men withdrew, leaving Haizaki Shogo alone in the room. Haizaki Shogo looked around and saw a middle-aged man in the room. The middle-aged man spoke first. Here, come and sit. Haizaki Shogo swallowed and was very curious about the identity of the middle-aged man. Who are you? Haizaki Shogo knows very well that anyone who can have 3 men with guns is either a gangster, either he is a high-level figure. No matter what the outcome is, the middle-aged man's status as a big shot will definitely not escape him. The middle-aged man smiled gently and introduced himself. My surname is Fang, and I am the person in charge of the Fang family group. My name is Fang Gaoxian. At the same time, I am also Fang Jilai's father. After Haizaki Shogo heard this, he had already sentenced himself to death in his heart. Although he doesn't know what the Fang family is, he knows Fang Jilai. I just blocked Fang Jilai. Although I was beaten, I was the first to take the blame at the beginning. Haizaki Shogo suddenly broke into a cold sweat and stopped thinking in his mind. He kept thinking in his heart, if I give myself another chance, I will pay tribute to Fang Jilai as my ancestor. But time can't be turned back, and he can't go back to the past. Just when Haizaki Shogo was ready to leave the world, Fang Gaoxian spoke. Don't be nervous. I just want to chat with you. Haizaki Shogo swallowed and forced himself to calm down. But there is still some tension. After all, the person in front of me even has a gun. Haizaki Shogo walked tremblingly in front of Fang Gaoxian, plopped, and knelt down directly. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was your son. If you give me another chance, I would not dare to do that. Chapter 135, Bad Boy Legion. Haizaki Shogo knelt on the ground and confessed in horror. Fang Gaoxian smiled lightly and let Haizaki Shogo kneel to the ground. After all, the person in front of me elbowed his son, making him kneel down to remember it. Haizaki Shogo kept kneeling on the ground without moving, and Fang Gaoxian didn't speak either, but just drank tea by himself. Just like that, the atmosphere became silent. Haizaki Shogo did not dare to make the slightest move. He kept kneeling on the ground, waiting for Fang Gaoxian to speak, and his body began to tremble unconsciously. After nearly 5 minutes of silence, Fang Gaoxian finished the tea in the cup put down the cup, and said, "You know you're wrong?" Haizaki Shogo nodded repeatedly and said in horror, I know I was wrong." Fang Gaoxian said calmly, "Get up if you know." Haizaki Shogo stood up quickly, and his legs kept shaking when he stood up after kneeling for a long time. After Haizaki Shogo stood up tremblingly, he saw that the tea in Fang Gaoxian's teacup was empty. With a strong desire to survive, he quickly picked up the teapot on the side and poured tea for Fang Gaoxian. Fang Gaoxian didn't stop him and waited until Haizaki Shogo was finished before picking up the teacup and drinking. A little discerning, Haizaki Shogo bowed and nodded repeatedly, his face full of desire for survival. After Fang Gaoxian took a sip of tea, he said lightly, "In this case, I will give you a chance to make up for your mistakes." How dare Haizaki Shogo refuse? He immediately agreed. "Thank you. Thank you." Fang Gaoxian took out a stack of contract from the drawer and handed it to Haizaki Shogo. "Sign it." Haizaki Shogo swallowed. He was very afraid that this was a contract to sell himself. But the situation at this stage was very wrong. He did not dare to hesitate, picked up the contract, and signed it. After signing the contract, Fang Gaoxian continued, "Since you signed the contract, you should abide by the things in the contract." Haizaki Shogo swallowed. Cold sweat continued to fall from his head, and he held the contract in his hand for a long time without daring to look at it. Don't you look at what kind of contract you signed?" Haizaki Shogo then looked at the contract with trembling eyes. After a long time, Haizaki Shogo read the contract. The horror on his face turned into shock. This is indeed a contract to sell oneself, but this contract to sell oneself is different from other contract to sell oneself, because his treatment is so good. The monthly salary is already more than the salary of many normal people in Sakura Country, with nearly 650,000 Sakura coins, 30,000 Dragon Country coins. And there will be more in the future. As for the contract that he needs to fulfill, there is only one contract. Unconditionally accept Fang Jilai's order and clear other dangerous obstacles for Fang Jilai. To put it bluntly, this is just a security agreement, but the treatment has become a little better and the service items are also different. Haizaki Shogo looked at the contract in his hand in shock and murmured in disbelief, Is this true? You don't blame me?" Fang Gaoxian smiled slightly. "I'm a businessman and I'm also a father." Haizaki Shogo soon understood his responsibility, which was to assist Fang Jilai. Since then, Haizaki Shogo has officially become one of the swords in Fang Jilai's hands. Fang Jilai fell silent after hearing this and fell into thinking. It turns out that's the case. No wonder Haizaki Shogo has obeyed my words since that day. It turns out it was my father who took action. Fang Jilai said in his heart that he didn't expect that his father had done so many things for him. It turned out that he had already made plans for his future and selected his teammates. This makes it completely clear. After all, in the original work, Haizaki Shogo is a completely disobedient master. Even if he is beaten half to death, he still looks for trouble. But after a meal of kindness and power from his father, Haizaki Shogo completely changed. However, Fang Jilai raised the next question. "You said you were just one of the swords my dad prepared for me, but do you know who the other swords are?" Haizaki Shogo looked sideways, nodded and said, "I know. I think you must have the answer in your mind, Brother Lai, right?" Fang Jilai raised his eyebrows slightly. He did have an answer in his heart. He hesitated and said, "Hanamiya Makoto." Haizaki Shogo showed a smile on his face and praised. "As expected of Reigo, I guessed it right at once." The remaining swords are Hanamiya Makoto and Seto Kintaro. Midorima Shintarō showed a shocked expression and said a little doubtfully, "Hanamiya Makoto? How could he behave so badly?" Before Midorima Shintarō finished speaking, Haizaki Shogo interrupted him. "No, Hanamong-jun has changed. He has completely changed since he met Mr. Fang. He has never used any dirty moves on the court." Midorima Shintarō began to doubt his ears. He did not expect that Hanamiya-jun, who was always known for being dirty, would actually change. Fang Jilai pinched the bridge of his nose and suddenly felt that things were changing a bit quickly. He began to recall his experiences. Whether it is Nash Goldo or Haizaki Shogo, they're all villains in the original work, and some villains are even extremely hateful. But even such characters were all collected by Fang Jilai. What is this? A bad boy army? Fang Jilai calmed down his emotions and asked aloud, Butler Sue, tell me which school my dad enrolled us in? Butler Sue replied respectfully while driving, Master, the school I'm enrolling you in is called Kurosaki No. 1. Fang Jilai's hanging heart finally died. Kurosaki Daiichi. Isn't this the team that Hanamiya plays in the original novel? This team, led by Hanamiya Makoto, is famous for its small moves, and almost everyone is shouting about it. But after Fang Gaoshuan's intervention, Kurosaki No. 1 completely changed. No one on the team used small moves to play. Thinking of this, Fang Jilai breathed a sigh of relief. If Hanamongzen and Seto Kintaro really changed. So the school his father chose for him has to be said to be very strong. Point guard Hanamiya Makoto, shooting guard Fang Jilai, small forward Haizaki Shogo, power forward Nijimura Shuzo, and center Seto Kintaro. The only weak player is Seto Kintaro, but Seto Kintaro's high IQ, if developed, wouldn't he be an excellent player? Hongsuin built his tactics and looked back, sighing, I didn't expect that I would actually be teammates with Hanamiya Makoto during my high school years. Chapter 136 Teak Past Events. Fang Jilai smiled faintly and sighed as well. I didn't expect it, but life is like this, no one can predict what will happen in the future. Hongsuin Shiozao sighed. Yeah, I can't say for sure. By the way, how are Haizaki, Akashi, and the others? Has anything changed since we left? After Haizaki Shogo heard this, his expression suddenly changed. Nijimura Shuzo immediately noticed the change in his expression. Nijimura Shuzo quickly asked, What's going on, Haizaki? Did something big happen after we left? Haizaki Shogo nodded with a strange expression. Some things did happen after you left. Fang Jilai frowned and said, Tell me more about it. Haizaki Shogo nodded and began to tell. Actually, after you left, there were no problems at first. Everyone trained normally and step by step to prepare for the competition the next year. But the problem happened in the second half of the second year. Haizaki Shogo sighed after saying this. Coach Platinum fell ill. Hongsuin Shiozao looked shocked and asked in disbelief. Coach Platinum is really sick? Damn Jilai, are you a prophet? Fang Jilai rolled his eyes at Hongsuin Zaizu and said nothing. Haizaki Shogo shook his head. It can't be said to be serious. It's just that I can no longer lead our training. In fact, it was thanks to Lai Ge's advanced preparation that Coach Platinum's condition was not that serious. Hongsuin Shiozao turned to look at Fang Jilai and asked, Jilai, what did you do? Fang Jilai looked sideways and said, My family also has a hospital in Sakura Country. I have said hello that as long as a member of the Teak basketball team is injured, the green light will be given and they will be treated as much as possible. When I was in Beautiful Country, they contacted me and said that Teak's coach was sick and hospitalized. When I inquired about it, I found out that the sick one was the Platinum coach. So I asked them to try their best to keep the Platinum coach, and obviously they did it. Yes, in fact, Fang Jilai had anticipated by Jinjing Zeo's illness, but Fang Jilai had no choice, because he had asked Shirogane Kozo for an examination in advance. And the examination showed that Shirogane Kozo's physical functions had begun to decline and needed treatment. Fang Jilai persuaded Shirogane Jinzo, but Shirogane Jinzo refused because he wanted to watch the growth of everyone in Teak. To be precise, he did not want everyone in Teak to take the wrong path. Fang Jilai had no choice, so he knew that the hospital had been arranged in advance to prepare for by Jinjing Zeo's illness. After Hongsuin Shiozao heard this, his thousands of words finally turned into a sigh. Why? Keep talking, Haizaki. Fang Jilai motioned to Haizaki Shogo to continue. Haizaki Shogo nodded and continued. After Coach Platinum fell ill, we were all very sad. After visiting Coach Platinum, we went back to training, but something unexpected happened the next day. Akashi has changed. He became someone we didn't even recognize. He was like a completely different person. Fang Jilai frowned, because what Haizaki Shogo said was all about one thing, that is, Akashi's second personality has awakened. But what makes Fang Jilai very puzzled is why Akashi was possessed by his second personality when he was not singled out by anyone. Haizaki Shogo continued to talk about the changes in everyone. Memories of Haizaki Shogo. Coach Platinum fell ill the next day. Teikō Basketball Club. Everyone in Teikō is training, but there is a trace of sadness on everyone's face. Haizaki Shogo was practicing shooting. After missing the basketball again, Haizaki Shogo smashed the basketball out angrily. Damn it! Midorima Shintarō saw this scene and said calmly, Haizaki, you are upset. Haizaki Shogo glanced at Midorima Shintarō, said cut, in displeasure, turned around, and continued shooting. Midorima Shintarō didn't pay attention and turned around and threw the basketball in his hand. King Fong Dehui said, Midorima, what are you telling him? Don't you know what kind of virtue he is? Ever since Alai and Nijimura-senpai left, he has completely let himself go. Aside from being serious in training, when is there not a time when you're fishing when you are competing? Midorima Shintarō pushed up his glasses and said calmly, I'm a little curious about him now. Why is he so serious during training, but when it comes to competition, he starts to fish for fish? King Fong Dehui waved his hand. I don't know. Anyway, I don't like him. Atsushi Murasakibara was eating potato chips blankly and asked, why didn't Chizai come and train? King Fong Dehui was also a little confused. Yeah, why did Nakashi come? He's the last person to be lazy. Xiao King Fong, do you want to challenge me? Kai's Ryota said with a smile. That's right, Ryota Kais has joined the basketball club and became Haizaki Shogo's substitute. He was attracted by Aomine Daiki's skills and has always aimed to defeat Aomine Daiki. King Fong Dehui waved his hand impatiently. No fight, no fight. I'm really not in the mood today. Seeing this, Kai's Ryota sighed helplessly and spun the ball in his hand. There is no way. After Coach Platinum falls ill, we can't neglect training. By the way, Xiao King Fong, you're so good. Why do you still train so hard? King Fong Dehui froze and fell into memories. After recalling the feeling that Fang Jilai made him that day, King Fong Dehui shuddered unconsciously and said in a deep voice, because I have someone I have to defeat. Kai's Ryota asked in confusion, is this the Fang Jilai you're talking about? Is he very strong? Aomine Daiki suddenly turned his head and said seriously to Kai's Ryota, very strong, so strong that I couldn't even score a single point against him. Kai's Ryota's expression was startled, and he asked in disbelief, are you kidding me? Xiao King Fong, you can't even score a point against him? Then what kind of monster is he? Atsushi Murasakibara took a bite of potato chips and slowly said, Dear Fong, I already miss him a little bit. Midorima Shintarō pushed up his glasses and walked over with a very serious tone. Kais, you just came here, so I don't know if you were right. Jilai was once the strongest and most comprehensive among us. Even my best three-pointer was lost to him. Kai's Ryota's expression changed drastically, and he was shocked. Xiao Midorima, are you kidding me? There is someone who is even 3 points better than you. Beep. A voice came out with hands on waist. Kai's Ryota suddenly covered his waist, turned to look at the person coming, and shouted, Little Kuroko, it hurts. Chapter 137 bet Kuroko Tetsuya rubbed Kai's Ryota's waist expressionlessly, causing Kai's Ryota to scream in pain. Kuroko Tetsuya ignored Kai's Ryota's screams and said, Jilai-san is indeed very strong. Kai-san, you can't defeat him now. Kai's Ryota shouted dissatisfied, I will definitely defeat him. Before that, I will defeat Xiao King Fong first. King Fong Dehui smiled mockingly. His tone was extremely calm. The only one who can defeat me is him. You can't. Kai's Ryota said unconvinced, Don't underestimate me. I will definitely defeat you. King Fong Dehui spread his hands and said, Then I'll wait for that day. Click. Tread tap tap. The sound of footsteps came out. Everyone in Teikō turned to look at the gate. I saw Akashi Shogo walking into the arena with an expressionless face, and the surrounding area exuded an indifferent atmosphere. Akashi Shogo walked up to the crowd and said indifferently, Everyone, we are all here. Haizaki Shogo said unhappily, I'm sure. Are you here just now like you? Akashi Sidro glanced at Haizaki Shogo coldly. It was this glance that made Haizaki Shogo feel as if he had fallen into a glacier, and it was so piercing. Shogo, don't interrupt when I'm talking. Haizaki Shogo gritted his teeth, looked ferocious, and did not speak for a moment because he felt a very dangerous aura on Akashi Sidro's body. Midorima Shintarō's expression changed slightly, because he also noticed the change in Akashi Sidro. It should be said that everyone noticed the change in Akashi Sidro. After no one spoke, Akashi Sidro continued to speak. Now that everyone is here, let me announce something. From today on, I hope that everyone will show their strength in the game and work hard in training, because we all have a common goal. I believe that everyone present already has their own ideas, right? The expressions of Aomine Daiki and others changed one after another, because as Akashi Sidro said, each of them has his own thoughts in his heart. That is, defeat Fang Jilai with his own strength. Except for Atsushi Murasakibara, Haizaki Shogo, and Kuroko Tetsuya, everyone else wants to defeat Fang Jilai with their own strength in high school. They are therefore constantly training. Because of that day's duel, Aomine Daiki always had a goal in mind and worked hard for that goal. In other words, Aomine Daiki has completely changed and has not turned into the arrogant and proud boy in the original work. Instead, he became a hard-working young man who followed in Fang Jilai's footsteps. Kai's Ryota worked hard because he always wanted to defeat Aomine Daiki. Now he also has another goal in mind, which is to defeat the person King Feng Dahui talks about, which is Fang Jilai. After Midorima Shintarō lost the 3-point contest, he secretly vowed to defeat Fang Jilai with 3 points. He, who is not darkened in the original work, now works harder. Everyone's blossoming has also become earlier. More than half of the second year of junior high school has passed, and they have entered the national competition with a score of more than 50 points in every game. Even though third-year Kotaro Hayama tried his best, he still could not escape the fate of defeat. Teikō won the game with a score of 66 points. Akashi Sidro looked at the changes in everyone's expressions and continued. I have communicated with the assistant coach, and the lineup arrangement for the national competition has been finalized. Center Atsushi, power forward, Daiki, small forward, Ryota, shooting guard, Shintarō, and I will be the point guard. After Akashi Sidro finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Kai's Ryota pointed his finger at himself and said in disbelief, "Little Akashi, you mean I am a starter?" Akashi Sidro nodded lightly and said, "Ryota is the starting small forward, and Shogo is the backup." After Haizaki Shogo heard this, he immediately shouted unconvinced, "What the hell are you talking about? Let me be his substitute." Haizaki Shogo has always been at odds with Ryota Kai's, so naturally he was very dissatisfied. Kai's Ryota is also very unhappy with Haizaki Shogo. In his eyes, Haizaki Shogo has always been a bad boy. This is an arrangement jointly made by little Akashi and the coach. Why are you dissatisfied? Haizaki Shogo angrily grabbed Kai's Ryota's collar and said viciously, "You kid." Akashi Sidro scolded, "Shogo, stop. Do you want to be kicked out of the basketball club?" Haizaki Shogo turned his head in displeasure and asked, "Who do you think you are? How dare you order me?" Akashi Sidro's expression changed drastically, and his aura of indifference became stronger. "You want to die?" Haizaki Shogo was so chilled by this breath that he unconsciously let go of his hand and let Kai's Ryota down. Damn it, what the hell is going on? Is this still the Akashi I know? Haizaki Shogo was shocked. It was hard to imagine that the gentle Akashi Sidro could exude such a cold aura, as if he was a completely different person. Seeing Haizaki Shogo loosen his hand, Akashi Sidro said indifferently, "Are you dissatisfied?" Haizaki Shogo gritted his teeth and said unhappily, "Of course I don't accept it. Why should I be the substitute for this kid?" Akashi Sidro said coldly, "His talent is higher than yours, but your talent is not enough to keep up with us. You are very weak." Haizaki Shogo stiffened after hearing this and shouted loudly, "What nonsense!" Akashi Sidro picked up the basketball on the side and said, If you don't believe me, let's have a one-on-one match. If you win, I will let you continue to be the main selection, and I won't ask for anything from you in the future. But if you lose, please quit the basketball club." As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked, including Kai's Ryota. He just doesn't deal with Haizaki Shogo. He doesn't want to completely get rid of Haizaki Shogo. King Feng Dahue quickly stopped him and said, "Akashi, your bet is too harsh. There is no need to quit." Aomine Daiki quickly hinted to Haizaki Shogo, "Haizaki, if you say something isn't a good choice." Although Aomine Daiki and Haizaki Shogo are not at odds with each other, they're fighting partners after all, and they have gone through mountains of swords and seas of fire together. Aomine Daiki really doesn't want Haizaki Shogo to leave. Kai's Ryota also echoed, "That's right, little Akashi, it's not necessary. At worst, I won't be the official candidate." Although a few people didn't deal with Haizaki Shogo, they didn't go to the point of forcing others to quit the club. Chapter 138, The Difference Between Plunder and Imitation. Akashi Shijiro ignored everyone's expressions and said calmly to Haizaki Shogo, "What's wrong, Shogo? Don't you even have the confidence to defeat me?" Haizaki Shogo looked ugly. Listening to everyone's conversation, Haizaki Shogo felt very dissatisfied, because what they meant was that he couldn't beat Akashi Shijiro. Haizaki Shogo, carried away by anger, shouted, "Hit! Who do you think you are?" Akashi Shijiro walked to the basketball court, passed the basketball to Haizaki Shogo, and said calmly, "Let's get started." "Ow! How could it be Haizaki didn't score a single point?" Kai's Ryota looked at the field in disbelief and murmured. King Feng Dahue frowned and was filled with doubts, because Akashi Shijiro gave him a very different feeling now. If the previous Akashi Shijiro was very gentle, so now Akashi Shijiro is extremely indifferent to everything. Akashi Shijiro held the basketball in both hands, looked down at Haizaki Shogo, who fell to the ground, and said calmly, "Shogo, please submit your resignation application to the coach yourself." King Feng Dahue was shocked and shouted, "Akashi!" Akashi Shijiro turned his head sharply, staring at Aomine Daiki with his eyes. His tone was extremely cold. "Dahue, do you also want to disobey orders?" Aomine Daiki wanted to say something else, but was stopped by Midorima Shintarō. King Feng Dahue turned his head and asked, "Midorima, what are you doing?" Midorima Shintarō shook his head and said calmly, "This is a bet that Haizaki promised himself. Neither you nor I have the right to interfere. You must think about the consequences before doing anything." King Feng Dahue fell silent after hearing this. Haizaki Shogo slumped on the ground watching this scene, gritted his teeth, and stood up, trying hard for his last bit of self-esteem. "You don't need to say more. I'm not someone who can't afford to lose." After saying that, Haizaki Shogo turned and walked towards the door of the basketball stadium, his back looking extremely miserable. Back to the present. "So you were expelled from the basketball club?" Fang Jilai twitched the corner of his mouth and asked speechlessly. Haizaki Shogo nodded, with a frustrated expression on his face. "Yes, I handed my withdrawal application to the coach the next day." Snap! "Hey, Nijimura-senpai, what are you doing?" Haizaki Shogo covered his head, his expression twisted together in pain. Hongsuin Shiozao had a black line on his head and said with hatred that iron cannot become steel. "Are you an idiot? Akashi asked you to be a substitute for that Kai's guy. So why don't you go and fight Kai's in a one-on-one fight? You and Akashi will fight in a one-on-one fight. If you beat Kai's, aren't you the first choice?" Haizaki Shogo was suddenly stunned. After thinking about it carefully, it seemed to make sense. "Hey, that makes sense." Snap! "Hey, brother Lai, why did you hit me?" Haizaki Shogo's head was hit again, and he asked with an aggrieved expression. Fang Jilai clapped his hands helplessly and said, "It's so wonderful to think about it. I think that even if you really have a one-on-one fight with Kai's, and even if you win, Ajin will not let you be the main choice." Why? X3 Nijimura Shizo, Haizaki Shogo, and Satsuki Momoi asked at the same time. Satsuki Momoi held Fang Jilai's hand and asked doubtfully, Lai, why?" I remember Akashi-san is not that kind of person. Hongsu and Xiaozao was also very confused. That's right, Jirai. If Haizaki defeats that Kai's, then Akashi probably won't let Haizaki be the substitute. Fang Jilai shook his head and explained, the reason Azheng also said is that Haizaki's talent is too weak compared to them. Because of Kai's talent, Azheng felt that Kai's could keep up with them, so he put Haizaki on the bench. Even if Haizaki defeated Kai's at that time, Zheng would still let Kai's be the starter. This is because of the talent gap. Zheng looks at the future, not the present. However, I think the future that Zheng sees is too narrow. He kicked Haizaki out of the team to pave the way for Kai's. I think he did something wrong. Haizaki Shogo looked happy, with a shy expression on his face, and nodded repeatedly. Yes, Brother Lai, you are absolutely right. Nijimura Shizo glanced at Haizaki Shogo speechlessly and complained. You know what? It makes me feel disgusted that you are acting like this with your face now. Haizaki Shogo's expression suddenly froze. Satsuki Momoi smiled secretly when she saw this scene. Speaking of Haizaki, what is Kai's ability? It actually makes Akashi think that his talent is equal to theirs. Nijimura Shizo asked. Haizaki Shogo thought carefully and said, imitate. Rubik's Cube? Why did you say G lies honorific? Imitate. Imitation of imitation. Imitation of imitation. Sorry, you go on. Haizaki Shogo took a few deep breaths, calmed down his mood, and continued. Kai's skill is imitation. He can imitate the movements he sees exactly. Hongsu and Xiaozao was slightly startled, and after thinking for a while, he said, Isn't that the same as your ability, Haizaki? Fang Jilai interjected. It's different. Hongsu and Xiaozao asked doubtfully. What's different? Aren't they all imitation? Fang Jilai explained. According to Haizaki, Kai's imitation was to imitate all the movements he saw intact. In other words, even the rhythm of the movements Kai's imitates will be exactly the same as the master of the movements. This is a little different from Haizaki. Although Haizaki's plunder is the same as other people's actions, but the rhythm of Haizaki's movements will be different from that of the original owner. He will make other people's movements at his own rhythm. It is precisely for this reason that Haizaki's plunder will give others a sense of oppression, making others feel more stressed and unable to perform the skills after being plundered by Haizaki. Hongsu and Zayuzu understood immediately and showed an expression of understanding. I see, wait. Suddenly, Hongsu and Xiaozao thought of a terrible thing. If we follow Jilai's words, then that guy named Kai's can imitate Akashi and the others. As soon as this idea came out, Hongsu and Xiao and himself were immediately shocked. Fang Jilai nodded and said, According to common sense, it is indeed possible. Nijimura Shizo patted Haizaki Shogo on the shoulder comfortingly. Haizaki, my condolences. Chapter 139, Kurosaki no. 1 Nijimura Shizo comforted Haizaki Shogo, and then asked, Haizaki, what did you do after you were kicked out of the basketball club? Quit. One reason at a time. Haizaki Shogo is very speechless, but there is nothing he can do to fix Nijimura. Whether it is on or off the court, he cannot beat him. Hey, after quitting the basketball club, I entered the basketball training hall founded by the Fang family and trained with Hanamiya Makoto and others. They're our current teammates. We have been training for a year in advance to cooperate with each other in order to do everything well for LEGO. When LEGO comes, let him see a well-trained team, not a poorly coordinated team. Fang Jilai was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that his father had been training them for a year, which surprised Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai patted Haizaki Shogo on the shoulder. Thanks for your hard work. It's not hard, Brother Lai. Niji Tsunshio couldn't help but take a second look at Haizaki Shogo. Thank you for your hard work, Haizaki. By the way, Haizaki, are you still struggling with being expelled from Teikō? Haizaki Shogo sighed. I've stopped worrying about it a long time ago. Although they were dubbed the Age of Miracles after I left, I'm not worried about it at all. Haizaki Shogo became angrier as he spoke, and his expression began to change. Hongsun Zizu twitched the corners of his lips and murmured in his heart, "You don't have any worries? By the way, Age of Miracles? What kind of title is this?" Satsuki Momoi asked. Haizaki Shogo immediately explained. It was the audience who gave the 5 of them the title, saying that they are geniuses that are rare to see in 10 years. Satsuki Momoi suddenly realized. So that's it. Isn't this the same as Lai's Rubik's Cube? Haizaki Shogo nodded. Yes, it's the same as Lai Ge Rubik's Cube. At least until now, the audience thinks Rubik's Cube is better than Age of Miracles. Fang Jilai was stunned after hearing this and asked, "Wait, what are you talking about? Do they still remember my nickname?" Haizaki Shogo nodded seriously. Yes, because in the second year, the audience started to speculate after not seeing you. Coupled with Lai Ge's previous performances and game status, the audience has a deep memory of you, and they still remember you to this day. Fang Jilai helplessly held his forehead, feeling very sad. Butler Su laughed at this time and said, "Young Master Fang, in fact, these are all done by the master. He doesn't want others to forget you, so he has been promoting you. Of course, the effect is there. Now, whenever someone mentions the Age of Miracles, they will think of your title, and they will also conduct a comparison, but you will win every time, Mr. Fang." Fang Jilai was shocked when he heard this. "Butler Su, what are you talking about? Who helped me promote it? I helped you promote it. Aren't you very touched? I am moved by so there's no need to torture me like this." Fang Jilai was about to cry, but had no tears. He originally thought that after he came back, the title, Rubik's Cube, would disappear without a trace, but after his father did this. Don't say it disappeared, it was completely welded. Fang Jilai lay weakly in Satsuki Momoi's arms, falling deeply. "Butler Su, tell me who my father called to promote it. What's the matter, young master? Tell me." It was handled by Manager Wang. He was the most active after the master finished speaking. Upon seeing this, the master also handed over this task to him. It can be seen that he has done a good job. "Master, do you want to reward him?" "Reward? Of course there is a reward. Manager Wang, right? You have a way to die." After Fang Jilai was melancholy for a while, he suddenly remembered something and asked, "Haizaki, where is Az? What's going on with Az?" Haizaki Shogo thought for a while and found that he seemed to have forgotten that there was such a person. So he shook his head and said, "Brother Lai, I seem to have forgotten that there is such a person." Butler Su's car slowly stopped at the entrance of Kurizaki First High School. Butler Su got out of the driver's seat and opened the door for Fang Jilai and others. After Fang Jilai and others got out of the car, they saw Huamong Jun and others waiting at the gate. Haizaki Shogo waved his hand when he saw it and shouted, "Yo, Flower Palace!" After Huamong Jun saw the person clearly, he immediately led everyone over. After walking in front of Fang Jilai, Huamong Jun bowed fiercely and shouted, "Lego!" Everyone in Kurosaki No. 1 bowed and shouted, "Lai Ge!" Fang Jilai's mouth twitched slightly. "Why, it looks so black." Fang Jilai helped Hua Gongjin up and shouted, "Everyone is up." Everyone was very obedient and straightened up one after another. Fang Jilai scanned everyone one by one. In addition to Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro, there are several familiar faces in the team. These faces are all members of Kurosaki Daiichi in the original work. Kurosaki's number 1 small forward in the original work, Furuhashi Kojuro, has an expression that remains unchanged for eternity. The power forward with bangs covering his eyes, Hara Kinzuya chewing gum in his mouth. A brown-haired shooting guard, Yamazaki Hiroshi. The 3 are Kurosaki's number 1 starting players in the original book. As for the substitute, I'm too lazy to introduce it. After Fang Jilai scanned the crowd, he had an idea in his mind. It has to be said that Kurosaki Daiichi's lineup is very luxurious at this time. Point guard Makoto Hanamiya, shooting guard Fang Jilai, small forward Haizaki Shogo, power forward Shizo Nijimura, and center Sito Kintaro. A true god Fang Jilai who is superior to all his peers, and a Hongsuin Shiojua who is comparable to the Age of Miracles, opening the zone with faith. Here the talent is equal to that of the Age of Miracles. A Haizaki Shogo from the Age of Sub-Miracle, a Hanamiya Makoto from the Uncrowned 5 Generals, and a Sito Kintaro who is connected to Hanamiya Makoto in a spider web. It can be said that this combination even crushed Rikuzen's combination of 3 untitled 5 generals, plus 1 Age of Miracles, plus a high-end version of Kuroko. It is not difficult for Fang Jilai to imagine that after the first year, era of miracles, we'll have to unite to practice with Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai said to Hua Gongjin, "Tell me more about the team." Hanamiya nodded and said, "Okay, Reigo. Our school provides training with materials provided by Mr. Fang, which means our training conditions are the best. At the same time, because we all train according to President Fang's plan, we don't have a coach or a captain. We left the coach to my sister-in-law, and the captain left it to you, Brother Lai." Chapter 140 Tradition. Fang Jilai nodded and thought to himself, "Dad is really thoughtful. Kurosaki Daichi didn't have a coach or a captain before, but now he has one. The coach is Satsuki Momoi, and the captain is naturally Fang Jilai." Fang Jilai waved his hand and motioned for everyone to follow him. Because Kurosaki No. 1 was the school chosen by Fang Gaoxian for his son, he naturally received support from the Fang family. Basketball stadiums receive the most funding, and all kinds of sophisticated equipment are in short supply. It can be said that Kurosaki No. 1 also took off completely thanks to the giant Buddha of Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai led everyone to the arena. After looking at the configuration of the arena, he said, "According to my tradition, everyone should have a duel first. As for your opponents," when Fang Jilai said this, he pointed to Hongtsu and Shiozao beside him and said, "That's Senior Nijimura." Hongtsu and Shiozao smiled at everyone. "Please give me some advice." Everyone in Kurosaki No. 1 nodded and replied, "Please give me your advice." Hongtsu in building. "Then which one of you comes first?" Haizaki Shogo immediately raised his hand and said, "I'll go first." "Oh, this kid can't wait." Nijimura showed a smile to Haizaki Shogo, then let Haizaki come first. Under the gaze of everyone, the two came to the court to prepare for a duel. Fang Jilai said to Satsuki Momoi outside the court, Yeah, record the data." Satsuki Momoi nodded and took out the notes given by Butler Su to record them. Haizaki Shogo looked at Nijimura Zuzu, and Nijimura Zuzu also looked at Haizaki Shogo. The two looked at each other. The air was filled with fighting spirit. Of course, this fighting spirit was only Haizaki Shogo's own. Nijimura Shizo has no fighting spirit against the current Haizaki Shogo. Shizo Nijimura handed the serve to Haizaki Shogo. Haizaki Shogo naturally did not refuse. He held the ball in both hands and began to observe the position established by Nijimura. Off the field, Hara Kanzuya asked while eating bubblegum, "Hanamiya, can Haizaki win?" Hanamiya Jin shook his head without hesitation. "There's no way Haizaki can win," Yamazaki Hiroshi said in surprise. Why?" "Haizaki is the strongest among us," Hanamiya Jin explained. "Hongtsuin is the #1 power forward in the middle school. Now he has been training with Lai Ge in the United States for 2 years. I don't know what his strength will be like. I'm afraid it will be the same as those 5 boys." Bang! Hara Kanzuya's bubblegum suddenly exploded and he blew it up. "Hanamiya, are you talking about Hongtsuin and the Age of Miracles?" Hanamiya nodded. "Yes, it should be pretty much the same. Moreover, I believe that Lai Ge will not do anything he is not sure of." Haizaki Shogo on the court also knew that he could not beat Nijimura Shizo because Fang Jilai never fought unprepared, since he dared to let Hongtsuin Shiozao challenge everyone. This means that Nijimura Shizo is physically strong enough to defeat everyone on the field, except Fang Jilai. Nijimura Shizo looked at Haizaki Shogo, who had been in a daze, and urged, "Hurry up, I'm going to steal it if you don't attack." Haizaki Shogo immediately recovered and began to attack. Under everyone's gaze, Haizaki Shogo kicked the ball hard to start the attack, and he started to break through from the right side. Nijimura Shizo instantly blocked his attack route. Haizaki Shogo's eyes focused, his body turned, and he made a turning movement. But all this was expected by Hongtsu and Shio, the inhuman experience and training in the Black Emperor Dragon team. This greatly improves the responsibility of Hongtsu and Shiojiao. Haizaki Shogo's current actions cannot pose a threat to Nijimura Shizo. The gap between the two is so big. Shuzo Nijimura once again blocked Haizaki Shogo's attack. Haizaki Shogo had no choice but to immediately pull outside the three-point line and prepare to attack again. In fact, Nijimura Shuzo had a chance to steal, but he did not do so because he was prepared to give his very appetizing junior more opportunities. Haizaki Shogo resumed the attack, dribbling continuously and, finally, making a sudden change of direction. There were no surprises in Nijimura's build, and he immediately blocked Haizaki Shogo's offensive route. Haizaki Shogo had no choice but to jump up inside. Hongtsuin Shiozao did not hesitate and jumped up. Looking at Haizaki Shogo getting further and further away from him, Nijimura Shuzo felt that this action seemed a bit familiar. It looks familiar. If it looks familiar, it should be blocked. Shuzo Nijimura slapped Haizaki Shogo's shot away. After landing, Hongtsuin Shiozao remembered why this action seemed familiar. Haizaki, yes, this is Shibuchi's god. When did you do it? Hongtsuin Shiozao said in surprise. No wonder it looks familiar to me. Isn't this Ryo Minoru's heaven? Haizaki Shogo looked a little regretful and replied, I slowly realized it in the training camp founded by Mr. Fang. Although he looks very similar, he is not the real heaven. Fang Jilai replied, of course, you can't imitate Mabuchi's shooting touch. Your plunder skills will be added to your own rhythm. Of course, Tan, which you added your own rhythm to, can achieve the elegant and soft feel of Mabuchi. So you're not Tion. You can give him another name, a name that belongs to your own skills. Fang Jilai suddenly felt that Haizaki Shogo's plunder was not useless because his plunder skill would add its own rhythm. Make your skills more favorable to yourself. This benefit is that it allows the plunder skill to be used more smoothly and may even be better than what the original owner used. But the disadvantage is also obvious. That is, it is impossible to pray the actions of players who rely on special physical abilities. This is why Haizaki Shogo cannot plunder the Age of Miracles skill. Haizaki Shogo thought carefully and finally decided, I can't think of a name. Forget it. Let's leave it at that. Hongtsun Shiozao laughed twice and joked, you're quite casual. Go ahead. Offense and defense transition. Nijimura Shuzo stood up straight, raised the basketball high above his head with his right hand, and made a shooting motion. Haizaki Shogo had no choice but to raise his center of gravity and raise his right hand to prevent Nijimura Shuzo from shooting suddenly. The corners of Hongtsuin Shiozao's mouth suddenly rose. Next second, Nijimura Shuzo suddenly lowered his center of gravity and instantly broke through Haizaki Shogo and entered the inside lane. A simple layup scored a point. Dunk? Sorry, the construction of Hongtsuin has been a bit old recently. After scoring the goal, Nijimura Shuzo joked, Hey, what's going on? Are you punished for standing still? Haizaki Shogo made a cut sound and said harshly, I was just careless. Hongtsuin Shiojo spread his hands. You didn't dodge, right? Come on, it's your turn to attack. Haizaki Shogo picked up the basketball on the ground and prepared to attack with a serious expression. Chapter 141 Haizaki Shogo's Wild Nature. Haizaki Shogo's pressure has increased sharply now because Nijimura's strength is much stronger than when he was in middle school. It's true that I've been following Lai Ge for 2 years. However, I'm not standing still. Haizaki Shogo slowly closed his eyes. In Nijimura Shuzo's doubtful eyes, a familiar aura emanated from Haizaki Shogo's body. Hongtsuin Shiozao looked shocked and said in shock, Wild. Fang Jilai's expression outside the court also changed. He felt the change in Haizaki Shogo's momentum. Although he couldn't see the special effects he had experienced so many years, Fang Jilai could tell at a glance that Haizaki Shogo was in a wild state. Since its wild nature, it's not in the original work. In fact, Fang Jilai didn't know that Haizaki Shogo had completely said goodbye to the bad things in the original work because of the changes in the Fang family. Coupled with the unwillingness and dissatisfaction of being expelled from Teikō basketball club, his motivation to train became extremely strong. He trained harder than ordinary people in order to prove himself. His wild nature was also awakened through his unwilling training. His wildness. It's a lone wolf. On the field, a lone gray wolf emerged from behind Haizaki Shogo. Its eyes revealed an extremely ferocious light, which was extremely sharp. The way it looked at Hongtsun Zaizu was as if it were looking at a prey that was being slaughtered. It exudes a bloodthirsty atmosphere that makes people shudder, cruel and cruel. Hongtsun Shiozao smiled softly and said jokingly, "Haizaki, you have become successful. Your wild nature has awakened." Haizaki Shogo ignored Nijimura Shizo's words. He focused his eyes and launched an attack suddenly, like a lone wolf hunting. The lone wolf figure behind him looked up to the sky and roared, exuding a fierce and ferocious aura. Hongtsun Shiozao smiled when he saw this and said calmly, "It seems I've been looked down upon." Suddenly, a fierce aura erupted from Hongtsun Shiozao's body. Hanamiya Jun outside the court suddenly exclaimed, "Wild nature! Hong village also has wild nature." Fang Jilai smiled slightly, without any change in his expression. That's right, Hong Tsunchio's experience in the Black Emperor Dragons not only awakened the zone, he also awakened his wildness in a high-pressure environment. His wildness can also be regarded as an incarnation of faith, an extreme desire for food, and it exactly corresponds to Nijimura Shizo's desire to score goals and repay Fang Jilan's love. His wildness. It's a shark. A giant shark with a slightly black back and a white belly appeared behind the Hongsuan building. The shark opened its huge mouth and bit the lone wolf. On the field, Nijimura Shizo immediately stopped Haizaki Shogo's attack. Not to be outdone, Haizaki Shogo kept making moves trying to break Nijimura Shizo's defense. Behind the two men, the shark and the lone wolf started a passionate fight. The lone wolf bit hard at the shark's back, but was whipped away by the shark's tail. The shark pursued the victory and bit the lone wolf's waist with its bloody mouth. The lone wolf kept struggling, but it is useless under the powerful power of the shark. Finally, the shark bit the gray wolf in half. The basketball was also intercepted by Nijimura Shizo. While contrast, Haizaki Shogo failed miserably. Haizaki Shogo stood there panting slightly, with a look of shock on his eyebrows. He didn't expect that Hongtsuan actually had wild nature, and that Hongtsuan's strength after turning on the wild nature far exceeded him. In fact, this is for sure, because Hong Tsunshio was tortured a lot in the Black Emperor Dragon team, and was killed indiscriminately by Zack and others. Finally, after awakening his wild nature, he stood up and started singing. But then Zack and others gave him another blow, because they also awakened their wildness. You can guess what their wildness is. A friendly reminder, the follow-up of the Black Emperor Dragon team will be for all members to awaken their wildness. During the training of the Black Emperor Dragon team, Zack and others became stronger than in the original work. This is because they have clear goals and sufficient motivation. Off the court, Hanamang Jun and others looked at each other, but they didn't know how to speak, because the game just had a huge impact on them. Haizaki Shogo is the strongest among them, and they can't beat him without going wild. But now, Haizaki Shogo is being defeated by Nijimura Shogo when he has turned on his wild nature. This shows that Nijimura Shujio is ridiculously strong. The saddest thing now is that they will have to face Hongtsuan Zaiuzu later. On the field, Haizaki Shogo passed the basketball to Nijimura Shizo and said, "Continue." The figure of the lone wolf appeared from behind Haizaki Shogo again, confronting the shark. Nijimura Shizo showed a smile on his face, holding the ball and preparing to attack. The advantages of Hongtsuan's build are speed and vision. Vision can only be used in multiplayer matches, but speed is different, and the shark speed in the sea is not weak. A shark and a lone wolf face off against each other. Suddenly, the shark moved. It launched an attack from the right, and the lone wolf quickly took a defensive stance to prepare for the attack. At this moment, the shark suddenly turned and bit the lone wolf's front leg from the left. On the field, Nijimura Shizo didn't hold back. He threw the ball hard, switched the basketball from his right hand to his left, made a change of direction, and broke through in an instant. Haizaki Shogo did not give up and followed Nijimura closely. Nijimura Shizo suddenly pulled back to an emergency stop, leaving Haizaki Shogo completely frozen in place. watching Nijimura Shuzo throw the basketball. Wild battle scene. The shark bit the wolf's front foot, pulled it back violently, and tore off the wolf's front foot. The lone wolf was unable to move because of this, and the shark continued to attack, opening its mouth and biting the lone wolf. Haizaki lost again. In this way, Haizaki Shogo was completely crushed by Nijimura Shuzo and lost the game with an impressive record of 0-5. Nijimura Shuzo smiled and patted Haizaki Shogo on the shoulder, jokingly saying, "Haizaki, you have to practice more. You little puppy can't fight back against my shark. It's a wolf." "Okay, puppy. It's a wolf." "Okay, puppy." Fang Jilai glanced at the two of them helplessly, these two living treasures. Fang Jilai decided not to look at the two of them anymore, turned to the others and said, "Next one." Everyone looked at me, and I looked at you, and swallowed. Hanamya closed his eyes and gritted his teeth and walked onto the field like a warrior. The results were no exception. 0 defeat. The others came on stage one after another, and all lost with a score of 0-5. Since then, the construction of Honsuin has been completely completed. "Well, let's kill 5 people." Fang Jilai turned around and asked, Yeah. How are the data?" Chapter 142. Siren High School. Satsuki Momoi put the pen on his lips, frowned slightly, and said with some dissatisfaction, Lai, it's a bit bad." It's no wonder that Satsuki Momoi thinks so. After reading the data reports of Jason Sieber and others, let's look at the data reports of Haizaki Shogo and others. No matter how weak it looks, the gap is really too big after all. Fang Jilai took the report from Satsuki Momoi and read it. Honsuin Xiaozao also walked over, stretched out his head, and took a peek. "It's a bit low indeed," Honsuin Xiaozao said after looking at the data clearly. Fang Jilai frowned and had a new plan in mind. Although the data of Haizaki Shogo and others are considered good for other high school players in Sakura Country, Fang Jilai is not satisfied, because he doesn't want everyone's future to stop at high school. At least Haizaki Shogo shouldn't stop there. After everyone had rested, Fang Jilai gathered everyone together. "Starting from tomorrow, I will arrange a new trainer to train you. Go back and have a good rest. Training will begin tomorrow." Haizaki Shogo and others nodded in unison. Yes. Fang Jilai nodded with satisfaction, turned around and asked, "Senior Honsuin, yeah, and I are going home. Do you want us to give you a ride?" Honsuin Xiaozao shook his head and said, "No, I'm going to go home by myself. I haven't seen my father for more than a year, and I miss him a little. Senior Honsuin, please pay attention to your safety. Let's leave first." When Fang Jilai saw this, he didn't say anything more. After a reminder, he left the school with Satsuki Momoi, got into Butler Sue's car and walked home. In the car, Satsuki Momoi leaned on Fang Jilai's shoulder and asked aloud, Lai, do you want to tell King Feng and the others about our return?" Fang Jilai shook his head, touched Satsuki Momoi's head, and said gently, "No need for now. Let's give them a surprise later." Satsuki Momoi narrowed her eyes in enjoyment and said sweetly, "It's all up to you." The two first flew to Satsuki Momoi's house to meet Satsuki Momoi's parents, and then Fang Jilai also stayed at Satsuki Momoi's house for one night. During this period, Fang Jilai immediately arranged for a trainer from Beautiful Country and paid to hire him to come to Sakura Country as a trainer. When the trainer heard that it was Fang Jilai, he immediately packed his luggage and bought a plane ticket overnight to fly to Sakura Country. The next afternoon, Fang Jilai walked into the gym with a trainer, not Victor. Victor is the professional trainer of the Black Emperor Dragons. This is another recruit. After Fang Jilai introduced the trainer to everyone, he said no more and let the trainer conduct the training. Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi were having fun on the side. Time passed like this, and in a blink of an eye, it was time for the qualifying rounds. Fang Jilai, Satsuki Momoi, and Nijimura Shuzo did not follow the team to the competition, but let Hanamiya lead the team and let them compete in the qualifiers. One is because the opponent is too weak and Hanamiya and others can handle it. The other is because Fang Jilai, Satsuki Momoi, and Nijimura Shuzo have another important matter. That was Kuroko Tetsuya, because Fang Jilai wanted to see if Kuroko Tetsuya was the same as the original work, so he went to Sirin and Kagami Taiga to form a new light and shadow. If not, it would be great fun. Everyone arrived at Sirin's competition location. Hongsu and Xiaozhao was still confused and asked, Jilai, why are we here? There don't seem to be any of my juniors in this school, right? Fang Jilai smiled faintly and said, I'm just here to verify my guess. If it's correct, Senior Nijimura, you will be surprised. Nijimura Shizo also became interested, following Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi into the arena. This game is between Sirin High School and Shinkyo High School. If Fang Jilai remembers correctly, Shinsha College is the school where a foreigner named Papa was introduced in the original work. In fact, Fang Jilai couldn't remember much because it had been so long since he came to this world, and he had forgotten many things. But he still remembers the major plot points clearly. Fang Jilai and the other three walked into the arena. There were not many people in the arena at this time, and there were only a few people watching. Fang Jilai looked at the people on the field carefully. After seeing Chenglin's lineup clearly, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, as expected, as, you still came to Sirin, but by the way, where is Miyoshi Teppei? Fang Jilai was a little confused as to why Muji Taiping was not in the team. In the original work, Miyoshi Teppei was seriously injured by Hanamiya and spent a year recovering from his injuries. But now Hanamongzen, under the guidance of the Fang family, is not doing any harm, which means that Muji Teppei should not be injured at this time. World will. Can this be forcibly corrected? The purpose is to make Kagami grow quickly. Fang Jillian thought peacefully. His conjecture was that Kiyoshi Teppei was injured in other incidents due to the intervention of the world's will, in order to make Kagami Taiga feel pressured and grow rapidly. Satsuki Momoi on the side also noticed Kuroko Tetsuya. She pointed at Kuroko Tetsuya and said in surprise, Lai, it's Kuroko-san. Nijimura Shizo looked in the direction Satsuki Momoi pointed. After seeing clearly, he was surprised and said, it's really Kuroko-san. Jilai, you brought me here because of Kuroko. Wait, it's actually him. Fang Jilai turned his head in confusion and asked, Senior Nijimura, do you know anyone else from Sirin? A smile appeared on Nijimura Shizo's face, pointing at Kagami Taiga and said, I know that red-haired guy. Fang Jilai looked along Hongtsu and Xiaozhao's finger. His expression became confused. Senior Hongtsuan, when did you meet him? Do you know Jilai too? Let's consider it acquaintance. Nijimura Shizo didn't ask any more questions and told him about his duel with Kagami Taiga. After listening to the entire process, Fang Jilai couldn't help but nodded. So, Senior Nijimura, you shave his head in front of other masters? Hongsun Xiaozhao smiled sheepishly. I wanted to go home quickly, so I accidentally pushed a little too hard. Fang Jilai smiled helplessly and focused on the basketball court again. At this time, a classic scene in the original work has already occurred on the basketball court. Papa lifted Kuroko Tetsuya up and said the classic words at the same time. To actually lose to a team like this with children, are they all children in Age of Miracles? Everyone in Chengrin immediately fell to the ground laughing. Although they were unhappy, they really wanted to laugh. Hongsu and Xiaozhao also heard this and couldn't help laughing. Ha! Kuroko is underestimated. Chapter 143, am I right? Just now, did that foreigner say the Age of Miracles was lost to Sirin? Satsuki Momoi asked confused. Hongsu and Xiaozhao smile suddenly paused and asked, is there any? Fang Jilai nodded calmly. Yes. Hongsu and Xiaozhao stood up straight with a puzzled expression. It shouldn't be. If we go by what Haizaki said, it's impossible for that red-haired man and Kuroko to defeat the Age of Miracles. I don't know. Let's ask after the game. Fang Jilai is also a little confused, because if what Haizaki said is the same, Kagami Taiga and Kuroko Tetsuya should not defeat Kai's Ryota, who has been training. There must have been something different from the original story, which is something Fang Jilai planned to ask Kuroko Tetsuya after the game. On the field, everyone is ready to start jumping the ball. Kagami Taiga chose to play a jump ball with Papa. Looking at Papa, who was taller than him, Kagami Taiga did not panic at all, but instead felt a surge of fighting spirit. The referee took the basketball to the middle of the two people and then threw it high. Kagami Taiga and Papa took off at the same time. The basketball was grabbed by Papa and passed into the hands of his own point guard. Nijimura Shizo outside the court looked at Papa's height with emotion. I didn't expect that there is a school in Sakura country that is looking for foreign aid, but this foreign aid is so weak. Apart from height and wingspan, there are no other highlights. Fang Jilai did not refute, because in the original work, except for using his height advantage to shoot, Papa did not do any other actions. The only skill package is hard throw. On the field, after the Shinfa point guard got the ball, he passed it to Papa, who took the ball and shot without any extra movement. Kagami Taiga stood there and watched Papa jump up, feeling shocked. How dare you underestimate me when you shoot without a fake move? Kagami Taiga jumped up suddenly and raised his right hand high in an attempt to block the shot. But Papa still used his height and wingspan to shoot the basketball. Brush. The basketball enters the basket steadily. Off the field, Hongsuin Xiuzhao held his head with his hands and spoke calmly. That red hair guy has pretty good physical talent, but he doesn't seem to have fully utilized his talent. Fang Jilai said nothing and watched the game quietly. On the field, Siren's offensive possession. Iwejun dribbled the ball through the half. His eyes wandered, locked the target, pushed with both hands, and passed the basketball to Hinata Junpei's hands. After Hinata Junpei caught the ball, he found that Papa was still a little far away from him, so he jumped up and shot. Off the field, seeing this scene, Hongsuin Zaizu couldn't help but shook his head. Facing a player who is much taller than me, I choose to shoot directly. Isn't this looking for a shot? Fang Jilai twitched the corner of his mouth and complained unconsciously. Senior Nijimura, you have a nerve to say that. Didn't you start like this when you faced Dickie Anthony? Hong Senzu smiled awkwardly and quickly explained, that's because I was distracted, not on purpose. On the field, Papa jumped up and used his wingspan advantage to grab Hinata Junpei's basketball. Hinata Junpei was shocked, no? It can be intercepted from anywhere. How big is the defensive range? Koichi Kawara, who was on Siren's bench, felt it was unfair and said, it's too cunning, recruiting foreign aid or something. This was heard by the captain of Xinxia, and he immediately mocked. Siren is a hot-blooded person. There are quite a few of them. They think it's cunning to bring in foreign aid, but it doesn't violate the rules anyway. Hinata Junpei looked calm and said calmly, well, no more than 2 people can be included in the main selection. The captain of the new association thought that Hinata Junpei recognized their behavior. So he flattened his palms, turned his attention to Papa, and said, yeah, what's wrong with bringing in good people? It's easy. Pass the ball to that guy, and you can score. Hinata Junpei glanced at Papa and said with his waist, I don't know if it's easy or not, but if you use that kind of strategy, don't complain if you get bitten back. Ignoring the change in the Shinkai captain's face, Hinata Junpei continued. We also have amazing guys here, although they are not imported. Maito Brinisuk stood behind Kagami Taiga and stared at him quietly. Kagami Taiga felt the chill behind him, shivered all over, and said immediately, no problem. After saying that, Kagami Taiga returned to the defense. In the subsequent games, Papa's shooting accuracy dropped rapidly, and he could only score 1 goal out of 5. Such changes shocked Papa and the people in Shinshia. The captain of the new association showed a puzzled expression on his face, very confused. The accuracy suddenly dropped. This is off the field. Hongsuin Xiuzhao leaned against the railing and slowly said, is that foreign aid's offensive method only limited to shooting? If that's the case, then Siren wins. Hong Mao's defense has actually become stronger. It seems that he is not standing still. Satsuki Momoi took a closer look at Kagami Taiga's body and murmured a little doubtfully. But his physical talent is obviously pretty good, so why can he only display this little strength? Nijimura guessed. I don't know. Maybe he didn't notice it himself. On the field, Kagami used the defensive skills he learned from Maito Brinisuk to drastically reduce Papa's shooting accuracy. Under this kind of defense, every shot Papa makes becomes very difficult, and Papa himself has no other skills, and even dribbling is very poor. His offensive method can only use his height and wingspan to shoot. Papa struggled to make another shot. Bang! Unsurprisingly, basketball once again struck gold. Papa froze on the spot, his expression extremely blank. The audience outside the stadium also began to jeer. You can't get in at all. It seems that foreigners don't have anything special to do. On the field, the captain of the new association was panting. Hearing the jeers from the audience, he secretly complained. That's easy to say, but there is a lot of pressure on the court. He looked at Kagami Taiga and thought with some shock, like the jumping ability that can block a 2-meter jump shot and the concentration that can even be called murderous. Facing such a person is no ordinary pressure. Off the field, Hongsuin Xiao's eyes suddenly condensed, and his tone became a little serious. Jilai, I didn't feel wrong, right? Fang Jilai nodded calmly. Although it's not obvious, it does exist. The corners of Hongsuin Xiao's mouth suddenly rose, and he said in a somewhat surprised tone, I didn't expect that the red-haired one actually also has wild nature. Chapter 144, Long Time No See on the field. After Papa missed another shot, he looked very upset. What, it's really annoying. The captain of the new association quickly said, Don't be impatient. It's not like the shot was blocked. Just go back to defense. Kagami Taiga gasped slightly, and his eyebrows twitched slightly. This kind of scoring is not easy for me. It's better to beat you cleanly. Kagami Taiga ran to Papa and blocked him. While blocking, Kagami Taiga said, Hey, let me make 2 points first. Kagami Taiga's expression became serious, and he said, Number 1, I'm going to knock your shot away in this game. Papa looked strange and replied unhappily, That kind of thing is impossible. I won't lose to a team with kids. Kagami Taiga suddenly turned around and rushed inside, saying at the same time, Second. Iwejun immediately noticed the movement and passed it in front of Papa. Papa looked at the basketball flying towards him in confusion, feeling a little surprised in his heart. Lucky, just as he was about to catch the ball, Kuroko Tetsuya suddenly appeared in front of him and slapped the basketball into Kagami Taiga's hands. Kagami Taiga caught the basketball, jumped up, and poured it into the basket. At the same time, he said, Children are very dangerous. Kuroko Tetsuya said calmly in front of Papa, By the way, can we stop talking about children? Off the field, Hongsuin Xiaozao sighed with emotion. I haven't seen him for such a long time. I'm still surprised to see Kuroko-san's playing style again. To be honest, I didn't even notice him just now. Fang Jilai was also a little surprised because he found that he didn't seem to notice the existence of Kuroko Tetsuya just now. To be honest, Kuroko Tetsuya was the only one who surprised Fang Jilai for so long. Because if Fang Jilai doesn't concentrate, he will sometimes ignore Kuroko Tetsuya. Of course, that's just not the case. On the field, Papa opened his mouth wide and murmured, What just happened? The captain of the new association may have panicked and immediately ran out of bounds and shouted, No matter what, let's return the ball first. After saying that, he passed the basketball out, but he ignored one person. Kuroko Tetsuya appeared in the path of the pass in an instant, intercepted the basketball, and shot it into the air. Kagami Taiga took off again and dunked the basketball into the basket. What the hell is going on? These two people, Papa murmured in surprise. Subsequently, at the end of the first quarter, Siren led 23-8. Fang Jilai felt that the rest of the game was basically nothing to watch. It was just Kagami Taiga who missed Papa's shot and won the game. The fact was just as Fang Jilai expected. Kagami Taiga jumped higher and higher, and once almost missed Papa's shot. As a result, Papa always avoided Kagami Taiga when he shot, but Kagami Taiga still found the opportunity to take the basketball away. In the fourth quarter, Siren rejoined Kuroko Tetsuya and won the game in one final move. When the game was about to end, Fang Jilai said, Let's go, it's time to meet our old friends. Satsuki Momoi and Midorima Shintarō hurriedly followed Fang Jilai's footsteps and went down to meet Kuroko Tetsuya. When leaving, Fang Jilai saw a familiar figure leaving the stadium. Kagami Taiga was packing his belongings when Papa suddenly walked up to Kagami Taiga. Kagami Taiga stood up, and looked at Papa. Papa was the first to speak with an expressionless face. I lost. Let's do my best in the following games. Kagami Taiga replied blankly. Oh. Papa suddenly spoke again. I wouldn't say that, idiot, huh? Papa laughed and turned around, suddenly bumping into something. Papa looked at the man who collided with him in confusion. The man's eyes were cold, and he stared into Papa's eyes. Papa suddenly felt an aura of death envelope his body, and a pair of blood-red eyes appear in front of him. Cold sweat instantly wet his back, his legs softened, and he collapsed on the ground. The sudden change attracted the attention of Sirin and others. Sirin and others all looked at the visitors and found that they were two men and a woman. The woman has an excellent appearance and an excellent figure, but their attention is not on the woman now, but on the man.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.